Thank you. So seeing quorum, the chair opens the June 15, 2022 meeting of the Mashpee Planning Board. We're holding this meeting at Mashpee Town Hall, 16 Great Neck Road North in the Wacoit Meeting Room. We're having a live broadcast of this meeting on local channel 18. It's being streamlined at the Town of Mashpee website, https://www.mashpeema.gov/channel-18. This meeting is being videographed, recorded, and photographed. I invite you all to stand with me and recite the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We're going to have to table the minutes of our last meeting to the next meeting, but we did receive them. Thank you very much. We have a public hearing at 7:10. In the meantime, I'm going to go down to the chairman's report. Just want to let everybody know that I went to the last Board of Selectmen's meeting and announced the LCP workshops, the one in June that we already had and the upcoming one for July, encouraging all residents to participate. I am going to then ask, under my report, for everybody else's report to their committees. I just want to, for the CPA, there is no report. Regarding the Cape Cod Commission, they're doing a child care assessment for Barnstable County. So if you are a child care provider or in need of child care or have some thoughts on that, the best way to go is to their Facebook page, the Cape Cod Commission Facebook page. And right now it's the two top posts. And there's a link. And I think it's either a survey or a questionnaire. But yeah, they're doing a countywide child care assessment right now.
What did you say, Mark?
So the Cape Cod Commission is doing a countywide child care assessment. So I didn't click the link, right? Because I didn't want to trigger any reporting, because I don't have kids. But I'm assuming it's a survey.
This is a survey, I took it.
Oh, okay, so it's a survey. So if you need childcare, have childcare, thinking about childcare, provide childcare, whether professionally or for just kids that you know, children that you know, please go to the Cape Cod Commission Facebook page and go on that link and take the survey. So anyways, any other reports? I'll start with John.
Didn't meet.
No. And that's the environmental oversight?
No, they're starting with me.
Okay.
Yes.
Karen?
I have a report on the Design Review Committee. There were two projects they looked at. One was the A&K Site and Septic LLC on Industrial Drive. They were looking to add a gate, improve landscaping, and the sign that never was approved. They wanted to change the sign to a 24-foot to reflect the current occupant and get approval. This is in an I-1 and R3 zoning district, and it was approved. The second issue was a project at 68 Mercantile Way, and it was a request for a 9,972 square foot building, just under the 10,000, so it wasn't a DRI. And it's to be used as contractor bays. There were 14 contractor bays, no sign proposed. And what I thought was interesting, the floor drains go right to a tight tank. So that's what they're using for septic removal and waste.
If you bring vehicles in a building,
Yeah.
it's a plumbing code requirement to
It
have
is.
industrial tight tank and floor drains.
So that means they have to empty those tight tanks monthly or weekly or?
Yeah, they have to contract with a local pumper to, clear out those tight tanks and so that removes the ability or the potential for industrial waste to leach
Is
into
that like
groundwater.
100% emptying any waste?
So it's capturing, if you're bringing vehicles in the building, the real concern is oil and lubricants and other fluids that go into the car, falling on the floor and being swept
Yeah,
into the floor
yeah.
drain. So instead of that going into your leaching field that goes to the groundwater, it's collected in a tight tank and removed.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, we have a few minutes. There's some invoices from Ed Pesci, our engineer.
Here we are. Each of these invoices is for projects we are holding funds for in escrow at the treasurer's office, so we're just looking for you to release those funds to pay Ed Pesci for his inspections.
Okay.
Oh, good.
Okay, the first one is Willow Circle Engineering Peer Review and Construction Inspection for the amount of $4,192.16.
I make a motion to release the payment of $4,192.16 to our engineer.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
Okay, one,
I should abstain as well.
2 abstentions, 3 yeses. Okay, the next one is Casper Circle Subdivision Construction Inspection Services for $3,506.68.
I make a motion, we release $3,506.68 to our town engineer for inspections.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
Abstain.
And 2 abstentions, it passes. Next one, 532 Main Street. I think that's Lemar Drive subdivision, engineering peer review services for $2,732.96.
Okay, I make a motion, we release $2,732.62 to our town engineer for inspection.
96 cents. 96 cents.
Short 30 cents.
92,
96.
96,
96.
all right.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
And 2 abstentions. And last one. For the property Sherman Williams, Route 151, engineering peer review and construction inspectional services for $1,039.14.
I make a motion, release a check for $1,039.14 for the town engineers.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
And 2 abstentions. Thank you. And would you, Evan, like to introduce Alex to everybody?
I would. Many of you have met Alex Beltran. He's been helping us with community engagement activities for the comprehensive plan and also with my chapter assessments. He's helped me build questionnaires that makes it easier to conduct interviews with department heads to get at what goals were accomplished in the comprehensive plan. He's a University of Florida undergrad, currently a senior, just finished his junior year and expected to finish 1 semester early next December. He's studying sustainability and the built environment and is getting a crash course in municipal planning. We're happy to have him on board. So with that, I'd like to formally introduce you to Alex, and he'll be with us through August.
Hi, Alex. Alex has already put in 40 hours, and I don't think he's worked here a half a week. He's been at everything that I've been at with the LCP, and I just really appreciate that, Alex.
Thank you, Alex.
Send to us.
She's
Somebody's
typing. Yeah. She, Ashley, excuse me. All right, so, seeing that the appointed time has arrived, I'm continuing the public hearing. The applicant is Marcello Magni, Forest Road LLC. The location is 523 Main Street, Mashpee, map 26, block 6. The request is for consideration is the approval of a 9-lot definitive subdivision of land containing approximately 18.05 acres located on Main Street, Route 130, between Nicoletta's Way and Echo Road. We have correspondence from Christopher Corain, who's legal counsel for the project proponent. So I'm just going to read it. It's dated June 15th. and he recognizes that he represents the owner of the property at 532 Route 130. As I advised in my last correspondence of May 18th, 2022, on May 12th, 2022, the applicant met with the owners of Nicoletta Way. At that meeting, the parties agreed in principle to utilize Nicoletta Way as access for the proposed subdivision, with the details to be finalized subsequent to that meeting. On May 26, 2022, a letter was sent to the owners of Nicoletta Way on our client's behalf, outlining the terms that were discussed, which would allow the applicant to utilize Nicoletta's Way for access. At this time, the owners of Nicoletta's Way are still reviewing the details, and we expect that review to be completed by the end of this week. Upon the completion of their review and finalization of the agreement between the parties, either a modified plan or a new application will be filed with the board. The owner has taken seriously the board's preference that a proposed plan reflect an agreement to use Nicoletta's Way, and therefore, we would respectfully request a further continuance from tonight's meeting to July 20th, 2022, to allow the parties to finalize such an agreement. So I'd accept a motion to continue the public hearing to July 20th, 2022. Is that a meeting about?
Yeah,
It is.
July 20th, yeah. What time, 7, 10?
7:10 will work. We have no other public hearings in the pipeline.
So be.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, thank you. Okay, so now we can move on. Old business, the local comprehensive plan update. Just to remind everybody in the audience, if you want to comment, make public comment, I will be calling for it at every item that's not a public hearing. Public hearings, I call for that during the public hearing at the appropriate time. Outside of public hearings, I'm going to be doing it per item. If you don't see an item on the agenda that would fit your public comment, then please just sign up at the table, and I'll call for general public comment at the end of the meeting. So, but I am going to start under the local comprehensive plan update with the assessment of the 1998 coastal resource chapter, which Evan prepared. So why don't you take it away, Evan?
Sure. So similar to the last assessments I provided, the format's a little bit different here. It's kind of reflective of the varying formats of the implementation plans for each of the chapters. I just wanted to make sure the information was presented to you in a way that was relatively clear. So in bold, in primary bullets, is the action defined in the coastal resources chapter. Each of the sub-bullets represents the findings of our interviews with DNR staff and additional research. But the coastal resources element of the 1998 comprehensive plan centers around 5 goals: to maintain and improve estuarine water quality and the health of our coastal ecosystems, to maintain and enhance public access to and enjoyment of Mashpee's coastal resources without degrading those resources, to minimize or prevent loss of life, property damage, and environmental damage due to a coastal storm, to provide for safe navigation on Mashpee waterways, and to enhance the economic benefits of the town's coastal resources without degrading those resources. So the 98 element focuses its actions, the short and midterm actions, around 9 primary issue areas that include water quality monitoring, stormwater runoff, nutrient loading, aquaculture, shellfisheries and docks, public access to water, waterways, dredging, and emergency planning. So I approach this relatively straightforwardly. I would like to thank the Shellfish Warden, Donovan McElligott, for his time in helping me prepare and conduct the research. That made this much more efficient. But I've laid out under each of those 9 categories the goal, the action that was defined in the 1998 plan, with a sub-bullet that gets at the work that has been done or is in process of being done, to provide some clarity as to where we stand. And just like some of our other chapters, much of these goals and priorities are being addressed by the town. in some variable form than what was defined in the 1998 action plans. So for water quality, for example, it calls for a lot of in-house work to occur, testing of total nitrogen in-house, developing water quality sampling programs in-house. And a lot of this work is happening, but it's happening in coordination with local partners, such as Department of Marine Fisheries and SMAST and Dr. Brian Howes at UMass Dartmouth to leverage volunteers for water quality sampling program. Total nitrogen, we've never purchased the equipment in-house to do that, but DNR staff feels that the current volunteer program that we do in coordination with other organizations is generally adequate. But they did note there's a growing interest from their department specifically to begin investing in equipment to more readily make them more readily able to test for varying harmful algal blooms and species identification for various algae that and that will allow us to address cyanobacteria blooms more readily. The town has purchased several SONs, which are real-time water quality monitoring devices, and they've purchased 3 additional devices. And parameters for testing water quality are reevaluated each summer. There were goals about internal administration and maintenance of files that pertain to surface and groundwater monitoring data. The planning department does get reports from those special permit projects that are required to test for monitor groundwater as well as test their effluent from wastewater treatment facilities. But beyond those requirements and what we receive in our department, there isn't a maintained file in-house with the exception of the water quality data that we get from our sampling partners. Additionally, I just wanted to note that many of the cluster subdivisions that condition there was approvals on water, relatively intensive water quality programs, as it seems to me that as properties transfer, homeowners associations fall out of as they lose their organization or become less organized, that those groundwater monitoring requirements are just falling out of knowledge, kind of out of place, out of mind. So we might want to consider how we can engage with those homeowners associations who may be subject to those requirements to make sure that their mandates are actually occurring.
Yeah, because we used to make them put wells in.
Yeah, I mean, I think of a few over, the Spring Hill West subdivision over near Santuit Pond is subject to a relatively comprehensive groundwater monitoring program, but I've never seen a report for it.
No, they don't update.
So
when you
those
say
are
that,
things I think
you know.
we should consider and figure out how we can enforce. And then again, as it pertains to water quality, there was, it gets at providing annual assessments of estuary and water quality, estuary sampling, and we do this in coordination with Brian Howes, and those reports are made available annually. There was a goal to continue and expand the activities of the Water Quality Task Force that I do not believe is active any longer. The next primary section that comprises actions of the 98 Coastal Resources chapter is stormwater runoff. It specifically stated it wanted to focus stormwater improvements to Santuit River, Poppy Bay watershed, and McCoy Estuary. The town is currently investing in stormwater improvements around Santuit River, specifically the pond via an MVP action grant. And the town is also continuing to make improvements at various boat ramps to mitigate stormwater impacts there for direct stormwater impacts to those water bodies. Stormwater runoff mitigation program. So there's no stormwater runoff mitigation program in place with the exception of the activity that occurs in conjunction with the town's MS4 stormwater permit. And maintaining minimum compliance with our MS4 permit doesn't necessarily mean we're doing a great job of removing nutrients at our stormwater locations, so we should probably consider an action whereas we can go above and beyond the minimum requirements of our permit and more effectively treat for nutrients at the stormwater collection sites.
Can I ask a question? Now, if we do something higher standard than the state, is that the same with the septic system? We used to ask for 5 parts per million, but the state is 10 parts. And a couple of times, we brought somebody in to say, hey, you're not meeting the 5. They said, well, the state's saying, 10 part million is all right.
I think I would need to investigate how,
That's
potentially, going above and beyond the minimum standards would impact our ability to enforce. But
Good.
that's certainly something we could gain clarity on. Our subdivision rules and regulations and special permit requirements are reflective of current Mass DEP stormwater management policies. There was a goal of establishing a storm drain painting program that had never occurred. These painting programs that the plan notes have occurred in Falmouth paint the storm drain to delineate or to communicate where the outfall of the storm drain goes. So people have a general awareness of what is going in that drain, where it goes, whether it's going into groundwater or an outfall into a cranberry bog or a wetland or something like that. That hasn't been prioritized, but DNR is considering enhancing an adopt a storm drain program, which could include marking the drain so that community becomes educated on where the outfalls are. The next category is for nutrient loading, and one goal is to establish a working group to study nitrogen management options. We felt that the sewer commission was likely the body that was studying those nitrogen management options. However, the Board of Health is currently assisting in evaluating the potential for IA septic technologies and the conflicts with Title V. There was a goal of integrating nutrient loading data into town GIS, and we didn't quite understand what was intended or meant by this particular action. We felt it could potentially refer to total maximum daily loads for each watersheds, and we need to follow up on what
I think
the
that's what
intent
it
was.
meant, you know.
And so those TMDLs were obviously defined and included in the comprehensive watershed nitrogen management plan.
All right.
But I just wanted to gain some clarity on that particular action. There was a goal of following up sampling from the 97 nutrient-related water quality within Poppy Bay. And this, again, gets at the annual report Brian Howes provides to the town with SMAST. Lobbying of state legislatures for implementation of Title V revisions. We weren't able to discern for this assessment what activities since 1998 have occurred around lobbying for that particular goal. So we'll check in with the health agent. We'll need to follow up with the health agent to determine if any Title V revisions have occurred since '98 and what the town's lobbying activities were. Another goal, regulatory boards adopt regulations that reduce groundwater nutrient loading to surface and groundwater bodies. After the CWNMP, Comprehensive Watershed Nitrogen Management Plan. So for cluster subdivisions, new cluster subdivisions, we do require the installation of D-Night septic systems. However, we have allowed in some cases conventional Title Vs with a payment in lieu of for specifically the purchase of shellfish seed to enhance DNR shellfish program and the shellfish portion of the Watershed Nitrogen Management Plan. The Board of Health requires D-Night systems for any use that exceeds 600 gallons per day. Concom currently has a bylaw review subcommittee. I just need to follow up with them to determine any regulations that specifically address nutrient loading. Planning board generally requires vegetated swales for special permit projects, and this is one of those areas where there may be conflicting regulatory requirements with the Board of Health who requires subsurface infiltration in these areas. Do you want me to go through each one of these actions, or do you want me to summarize more efficiently? So I can keep going, but I think we'll be here a little while.
I read them, I love them, I'd love to hear them. Go ahead.
Next, amend water quality zoning bylaw as follows: to be based on mass loading approach, and 2, increase minimum lot areas in the Poppy Bay watershed. R3 areas to 2 acres unless D-Night septic's used and connected to a treatment plant. The water quality bylaw was amended to be based on the mass loading approach in 2006. However, the R3 areas in the Poppy watershed that are not on D-Nights have not been rezoned since 1998, so they remain 40,000 square foot minimum. There was a goal of integrating into the town's GIS the hydrogeological mapping of groundwater recharge areas of coastal ponds and bays. Both mapped Zone 2 groundwater, the GIS has both the Zone 2 groundwater recharge areas mapped and are nearly identical to the groundwater protection zoning district. Are also uniquely mapped into town's GIS. Construct sewer in accordance with the comprehensive watershed nitrogen management plan, and as we know, phase 1 is underway and is certainly a goal for the town to follow through. Wants to strengthen follow-up on privately funded water quality monitoring programs under water quality report bylaw. I kind of addressed this a little bit before. We are for the special permit projects, cluster subdivisions that are subject to groundwater quality monitoring programs. We need to follow up in some capacity, and we need to figure out some mechanism to enforce those as properties change hands, homeowners associations kind of become disorganized and are kind of unaware of these requirements. So we need to consider how we can build our capacity to achieve that. Strict enforcement of towns' areas of critical environmental concern, groundwater protection district and river protection districts. This has never been an issue since I've been a town planner, but I do need to follow up and have a further discussion with the building department if that's been an issue of enforcement for them, and I will follow up with them. Continue acquisition of conservation lands in recharge areas. The town has acquired numerous parcels in Zone 2. Arenda, the Commonwealth, and other partners have also held significant acreage in these areas. So for those parcels that are still unprotected and in groundwater recharge areas, they should remain priorities for acquisition. Townwide education program on fertilizers and pesticide use. I think this is ongoing with a particular focus around Santuit Pond and those freshwater bodies that are suffering from external nutrient loading from chemical fertilizers. So we'll continue that education program, I guess, in coordination with DNR. Amend subdivision rules and regulations to limit tree clearing. I do want to look a little bit more closely at our subdivision rules and regulations, but I think our recent experience tells us we don't have that. I'll want to look at the subdivision rules and regulations to make sure that that language is, if it's in there,
I
it's
remember
functional.
we modified a subdivision. There was something about the limit of lawn area.
Okay.
Yeah, 20% is.
And it was an established neighborhood, and some families had children, so they came back to ask for special permission that they could have a lawn in the back. So it was very interesting. It was really interesting. So that's another thing. It's not so much clearing trees as lawn space.
Sure.
So,
But I'll give a thorough review of the subdivision rules and regulations. There's a lot in the land use growth management and other sections that we'll be assessing that really pertain to zoning and subdivision rules code, so we'll capture that in that assessment. The next primary category is aquaculture, with one goal of developing an aquaculture plan that gets at thresholds, grant size, the appropriate number of grants. Up until recently, this hasn't been addressed. However, DNR was recently awarded a significant grant from the Seaport Economic Council to develop a harbor management plan primarily focused on identifying user conflicts within the waterways and making recommendations to mitigate them. Such user conflicts could include mooring fields in priority areas for shellfish aquaculture. A component of the harbor management plan will be to identify an aquaculture development zone. User conflicts are diminishing the ability of public and private aquaculture operations to maximize yields. And Donovan, in our conversations, noted that land-based aquaculture is a relatively unexplored opportunity.
so while we're on the harbor management plan, so that's DNR,
Yes,
and they got money from,
Seaport Economic Council.
and where are they now with respect to the plan?
Very early. I
Okay.
think they've just finished procurement-related
Oh,
issues
okay.
with their consultant. The award was made within the calendar year.
Yep.
It's ongoing. I don't even think they've held like a kickoff meeting or established their scope of work yet. But I'll follow up with DNR, and maybe they can come in and make a report to the
Yeah,
board.
when they're I mean, I think when they're ready for public engagement, I think it'd be great
Cool.
because they don't have a citizens body that, or a committee, do they? Oh, they
They have
do.
the Waterways Commission.
I have the
And
waterways.
the Shellfish Commission.
But
It's
if,
the commission.
oh, yeah, and that's usually, but anyways, if they ever they need the space for the televised version of it or whatever, have them come in and we'll, we'll have them do it as a joint meeting with us or whatever we need to do.
Moving on is the next subject area is shellfisheries and docks, with the goal of an action of reviewing construction and expansion of docks and shellfish resource areas as to not adversely impact productivity of those shellfish resource areas. Docks are reviewed by the Conservation Commission and are currently actually limited to a 200 square feet. The new dock space, docks in shellfish resource areas, and also the addition of mooring fields, which are now, you cannot shellfish based on a new FDA regulation in a mooring area that has 20 moorings or more, which has vastly compromised our shellfish resource areas. So a big goal of the harbor management plan is going to be to strategically move those mooring fields in away from those shellfish resource areas as to maximize the ability for our shellfish resource areas to expand without compromising the utility of our waterways for passage. A pre-application conference requirement with Shellfish Constable, Harbor Master, and Conservation Agent. We have site plan review, but we don't specifically review stuff that's going in the waterways, and the Waterways Commission reviews those Chapter 90 licenses for waterways, Chapter 91 license for waterways. However, I don't know if there's a pre-application conference. I need to follow up with Drew McManus in that regard. Prepare accurately scaled maps of shellfish resource areas. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts maintains maps of resource areas on something called Mass Mapper, and DNR maintains maps of shellfish resource areas and family shellfishing areas. So they felt that they're given the Commonwealth resources to maintain that internally would be a duplication of resources. Develop survey, monitoring, and assessment programs in support of shellfish resource areas underway via Harbor Management Plan. Develop public informational handouts that are given to applicants of dock permits. Shellfish and water quality guides are produced and disseminated to applicants. Develop program to seek voluntary conservation easements where shoreline habitats are critical to species survival. The Wetlands Protection Act covers this, however, no local program has been maintained since '98. Next subject area is public access to water, and it's first include clear explanations of public ownership of submerged lands, public trust, rights of fishing, fouling, and navigation within the intertidal zone. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts defines rights of ownership within the intertidal zone. The Harbor Master clearly marks these with aids to navigation. Further, new dock permits get a placard. Further opportunities for community and public ownership could potentially be enhanced. Investigate and inventory the legal status of all known public landings and access to coastal water and great ponds to develop an access plan. Status of an access plan is unknown. However, reassessing and updating the legal status of all known public landings is a goal of the Harbor Management Plan that's getting underway.
And that's, when you say public landings, would that cover access to the Great Ponds or just part of our public access to water?
I would need to refer to
Yeah.
DNR with that question. I believe it would include both, but I'm not.
That'd be great if it did, and it'd get done, you know? But that would be great to know if they can take care of that whole bullet point.
Next action is to adequately budget for maintenance of existing public access sites. The DPW has been working on enhancing numerous access points, generally with joint funds from the CPC and Capital Improvement Program. Other access points, such as the boat ramp to Mashpee Wakeby, are under state control. Investigate new sites for public landings, specifically 10 acres at the end of Willsworth Road, Buffalo Head Bay land fronting Jehu Pond, Mitchell's Landing, and Jack Bond Terrace. Public rights of access to water via Mitchell's Landing and Jack Bond Terrace are contested by adjacent private property owners. Mitchell's Landing has been blocked off by large boulders for numerous years. Jack Bond Terrace was not taken by the town when Jack Bond was laid out for taking by town meeting. These terraces along these portions of Shoestring Bay have been the subject of debate in recent years. DNR used to launch a boat at Jack Bond Terrace, but has since ceased launching from there as a result of neighbors contesting the public or private nature of the area. Definitive research ought to be conducted. The Buffalo Head Bay land fronting Jehu is held under a conservation restriction, and it is unclear if access to Buffalo Head is a use permissible under that conservation restriction.
So I wonder if, and I know they're busy, but I wonder if community preservation could fund this work,
That would be very cool.
like as a feasibility study.
Yeah, all these layouts, all these road layouts that were laid out prior to the adoption of subdivision control, all terminated at the water. They all terminated at the water, and they had a right of access there. And similarly to some land in New Seabury, these rights of access terminated at the water. But when land was registered, there were cases where when the land became registered, the judge in question specifically did not make a finding whether relative to the public rights of access, and it's never been rectified. So we should seek to rectify those.
Do you want to put that down as a possible sub-action step? Because it looks like there are professionals that could help us determine that, but who's going to pay for it?
Right. I will note, I think I note this in 2 more bullets, but DNR is currently in the midst of assessing access at the end of Horn Pint Road across from Gooseberry Island, and as well as on Daniels Island Road. Just right before I get to that, though, there was a goal of developing a coastal picnic area via Adopt a Sea View, and this action has not been prioritized. But again, getting at the Punkhorn Point and Daniels Island Road, DNR did note a new boat ramp is being contemplated for 2023, and I'm noting now that I can't recall if it was at Punkhorn Point at Daniels Island or somewhere else, so I'm going to have to clarify that point in this assessment. There is a kayak launch at the north end of Bayview Road on Secaucet Island. We do need to follow up regarding remaining sites identified in the 98 action plan. But again, this is gets at my understanding that these identified ways to water and historical public access sites were compromised when Mashpee Land was registered, without notation or action or decision by a judge delineating what rights you had to traverse the ways to access water. Private landowners have generally had success preventing public access, but we can work to confirm this. Next is waterways. Develop a multiple-use water management plan. Again, this is getting underway via the Seaport Economic Council grant with DNR, the harbor management plan. Goal of enforcing boating regulations and increasing harbor master funding. With a full-time year-round harbor master and a full complement of seasonal assistant harbor masters, all waterways except Santuit and Neshumet ponds are actively patrolled by harbor master staff annually, and boating regulations are enforced. Provide literature on speed zones, restricting areas to all mooring applicants, slip owners at marinas, and those paying boat excise taxes. Mooring applicants do receive literature, however, we are uncertain about whether or not private marinas are giving literature to slip owners, and the assessor is not currently offering literature to those paying boat excise taxes. Keep updating mooring records and enforce mooring regulations. The entire mooring record database was recently digitized and maintained by DNR harbor master staff. The harbor master enforces those mooring regulations and removes illegal moorings. Goal of continued coordination between harbor master and shellfish warden for location of moorings, mooring fields, and shellfish resource areas. These are two staff level positions that are in constant communication, and recent regulatory changes at the FDA, this is what I noted previously, designed to protect the public health around fishing areas, have removed the ability to utilize shellfish areas where there are more than 20 moorings. This has created a challenge in Mashpee given existing user conflicts, and the harbor management plan is going to try and rectify these conflicts. Develop a policy stating limitations of new mooring fields to protect shellfish resources. Similar to above, the FDA regulations govern new moorings in consideration of these areas, and the priority of the harbor management plan will be to consolidate existing mooring fields to open up priority shellfish resource areas that are impacted by the new FDA regulations. Provide assistance to encourage improvements to water access, parking, boat ramps, stormwater capture at marinas, and improve access to launch sites. DPW, again with CIP and CPC funds, have regularly addressed these issues. Recently, improvements to Aquay Bay boat ramp have been completed. Program for public awareness of safe boating procedures. This isn't necessarily done in-house, but the Coast Guard Auxiliary is the best resource in that regard. Dredging. Develop a master dredging plan and maintenance program. Waterways Commission manages the annual dredging program, places a focus on Poppy Bay and nourishment of Southgate Beach and Papaneset Spit. Additional funding opportunities for dredging need to be understood and taken advantage of. Permits currently held in the name of the Chairman of Waterways Commission need to clarify permittee for future years. Emergency planning. Maintain mapped inventory of critical coastal resources and harbor facilities. The Commonwealth maintains this inventory and makes available to municipalities via the Geographic Response Plan, that's what it was identified to me as. Provided a descriptive inventory of equipment and facilities is maintained, the town manager annually requires every department head to submit a manifest of all equipment and facilities that is under the care and control of the department. Make emergency response training available. Both DNR and Mashpee Fire are trained for oil spill events, and additionally, all DNR staff and first responders are certified in CPR. Complete community rating system application. We are in the community rating system, and so that application is completed. Conduct study of primary emergency access roads to coastal areas subject to flooding. We do have a hazard mitigation plan that was completed in 2017. However, it requires an update, and that is my assessment. Got through it.
Does anybody have any comments? I mean, I do, but I'd like to hear from you guys first.
I guess we've got a bit of work to do on capturing data, for sure. But sounds like a lot of work is underway, but there's a lot more work to be done.
Always.
John, did you have anything, Rob?
I'm with Mike, I just can't, it's hard to understand after 24 years how much is not done.
Well, I mean, it's not that variables change, but here's where I think this is really sound, concise implementation plans are important in the comprehensive plan, because none of these actions were associated with a department or a department head with funding sources attached to it. It was defined, the action, but the role and responsibility for completing the action was not. So that should be something we consider as we
Right. Let's
develop our
learn from
updated
that.
action plans.
Yeah, a lot of things were started,
Yeah,
they just weren't completed.
right, so let's learn from that as we update the plan.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
On the cluster subdivisions that require the installation of denitrification systems?
Yeah.
How do you assess?
Karen, can
okay,
you just pull your mic in?
Sorry. How do you assess allowing Title V, conventional Title V, with a payment in lieu for the purchase of shellfish seeds? Because how can you judge whether those shellfish seeds are going to produce adult shellfish? I mean, because since our water is so eutrophied, how would you, that sounds like a judgment call that could really be
I don't disagree.
violated.
I am not able to answer your question. I can only think of one cluster subdivision where this applies, and it was the Aquay Highlands special permit cluster over off Blue Castle Drive between DeGrasse Road. There's some calculation that was that determined the appropriate amount of seed to purchase that was based on nutrient loading and the potential for mature shellfish to remove the nutrient load. So it wasn't arbitrary, but it's a little bit beyond my area of expertise. But that was what has been done.
It does work some,
Works
What
some.
did you say?
it works.
I think
It worked?
Yeah.
with compromised, bottom habitat and stuff, I think what you're just saying is there's no guarantee that shellfish will mature and do its
Right.
job in
Right.
consideration of the removal of the D-night.
I have a question. We mentioned Buffalo Head Bay. Isn't that where we're trying to put shellfish, the seeds, in that area there, J.U. Pond?
I think so.
So why would you have boat access coming out of there?
I think,
Maybe kayaking.
sure. I think that's why the harbor management plan has really been the #1 priority for the DNR director, because the user conflicts in the waterways is growing more and more substantial. And we play such an intensive role on the shellfish in our water quality plans that we need to rectify those user conflicts and make it safe for boaters to navigate the waterways.
Okay.
All right. So what chapter is this going to be in the updated LCP?
We have it as a natural resources chapter. But you can call it anything you want. We just need to make sure we maintain compliance with the commission's regulations.
Only thing, how some of these things are gonna get done, was gonna be the money.
Yes.
That was the problem, that why they're never done, because you have to submit grants to the state or whatever, and they only give out so much money.
Of course, yeah.
Also-
Economic feasibility of our actions is a critical consideration as we develop our implementation plans.
I read the executive summary of this element, the coastal resource element, and you put the goals and then the actions, which I really like as your assessment, right? And it's very interesting. We just had our natural systems workshop, and a lot of things that people brought up,
We're still in here.
it's in here. It's very interesting.
You better, good.
Like that enforcement thing came up in 3 different tables.
Yeah.
So, but anyways, there's an inventory, so in the current chapter, there's an inventory, and Ashley, you can pipe in if you want, inventory section, an analysis section, a recommendation of policies, and then action steps. So is that inventory section gonna still be in the new chapter?
We are going to include an inventory of all, coastal resources, including both facilities and equipment, as well as actual resources on the ground.
And then you have an analysis and an analysis section and the recommendation policies. Have you given those thoughts, if those are gonna be still sections?
Well, I mean, that's really up to you all. But our existing conditions really is what lays the framework for analysis of the existing condition and what, in consideration of goals and vision, we define as actionable steps to achieve that goal. So yes, I think in some variation it would.
I think this analysis section was really good. I think this should stay. I think the recommended policies probably was what the report from the consultant was.
Yeah.
I think we might be able to skip that and go right to the action steps. But the inventory section of this and the analysis section, I think, should stay and be updated.
Nothing changed that much since that was written, you know, I mean, there's some things we got done, but
As I'm doing these assessments, what I'm finding is, you know, it really critical as we do update the document, is how we format and the implementation tables and the implementation plans.
Yeah.
Who's
They're
responsible?
inconsistent across chapters and they don't
Yes.
really well define whose responsibility each of these actions are, which I think we can certainly enhance in this update.
Does that sound good with the other planning board members, that we keep the inventory and analysis section for this chapter?
I think so.
Sure. Yeah, I think you have to. I mean, unless you, for future reference, you're gonna have some kind of inventory that you look back on and look and see what you did
And what we
with
need to
it.
do.
No, I agree.
All right, that's great.
These whole the action plans are stronger in the future in terms of development and completion.
Yeah, this chapter, you can tell they spent a lot of time in it.
Yeah, and I think also that's clear in the existing conditions too. I mean, the amount of resources and data available for coastal resources is relatively extensive and more extensive than most of our other elements, and that's clearly, you know, identifies the priority the town has taken in addressing these issues over the years.
So if there's no other comments from the board members, I'd like to ask if there's anybody from the public that would like to comment on the assessment of the 1998 coastal resource chapter. Go ahead, Lynn.
Sorry. I don't know which one. Yes. Lynn Barbie, Surf Drive. One of the other things that I saw a lot on Saturday at our workshop, and something that is dear to my heart in all of this, is I think one of the things that was missing from the action here is a really comprehensive public education campaign. People know there's stuff isn't great, you know, the water is polluted, whatever, but they don't really know how we, with whatever we do, contribute to that. And I think that for all of the good policies you have, if people don't say, what is my role in this? And I'll just give you an example. A couple years ago, when we first started talking about, when I first heard people talking about the fertilizer, nitrogen fertilizer, I talked to some of my neighbors about that, and I said, well, you know, we need to stop doing that. They said, well, we don't live near the water, so it doesn't matter. So I think people just really have very limited comprehension of our own individual contribution to issues. The other example I could give you was overturning the plastic ban, because, you know, it's really not understanding the level of microplastics in our water. So I would hope that included in the action part of this is, you know, a really good program of public education. And I'll put in here in year 4 of this, the old one, it said, provide a public information program, and then it talked about getting high school students involved in something like that. That's on page 65. So I think there's lots of ways of doing that, getting students involved, but a lot, you know, much more public education, whether it's Mashpee TV or posters or seminars or whatever. Thank you.
We did have a blue book out about Mashpee, but the stormwater, and it was exactly what Lynn said, that we He said, when you flush your toilet, it goes into the groundwater.
Yeah, I remember that.
Beverly Kane, I don't know if Arden was on the board at the time, but
I-
I don't know what happened to that. We had them at the, when you come in here and we handed them out to the school. But that was a good little program.
Wow,
In line with that,
yeah.
you get the schools involved.
Yeah.
Even like it's an extracurricular kind of a thing for the students. I can tell you, the way parents will learn about this, is when the kids go home from school and talk about what they learned during the day. And they're gonna ask questions, and parents are gonna have to learn, because they can't answer the questions.
And they embarrassed their parents about recycling everything.
Well, that's right, remember that?
They
yeah.
do, because they learn it in school when they come up. How come you're throwing that, you're not recycling it?
Yeah.
That's a good program.
Yeah, exactly. Can I make a comment?
Ashley, do you have any comments on this?
She hasn't seen it yet.
Oh,
You're
okay.
the first to see it.
I can hear you. I just have to come off of mute, so it takes a second. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Are you asking for comments in general about what you've been discussing or about the public education piece?
The first bullet, assessment of 1998 coastal resource chapter.
Okay, so in listening to your conversation about the sections that you mentioned you wanted to keep, the formatting of the document is really up to you. What we do want to try to keep consistent across chapters is how each chapter is formatted. So if you want to call out specific sections in specific chapters, we would just want to look at how that carries through, from chapter to chapter. You want people to become comfortable with a specific format, and so that it's easy for them as a reader to go from topic to topic. And I think the sections that you did talk about, the inventory section, I don't know that it needs to be its own section. That's kind of covered in existing conditions, because in existing conditions we try to talk about what the town currently has for each chapter and what resources are available to them. And then in the analysis section, that really starts to come out in policies and actions, but certainly we can take a look at how we work those specific subheadings into relevant chapters. We just want to be mindful that we want to create a pattern for the reader that's easy for them to go from chapter to chapter, that they become comfortable with a format.
I'm just writing this down.
As long as your existing conditions equal your inventory and your policy and actions equal your analysis, it's the same thing.
Right.
So-
It really is. I just want to make sure, that the board is comfortable with the approach in doing that.
So you said,
how we approach calling those specific things out, because like I said, we want to try to keep consistency from chapter to chapter.
anything else, Ashley?
Nope, that's all.
Okay. And public comment. There's another person for public comment.
Hi, Arden Russell, Sturgis Lane. I just want to reiterate that I was there on Saturday as well, and I did hear a lot about enforcement, and then also a lot about proper staffing at town hall level for both enforcement and accomplishing these strategies. But I wanted to mention that DNR, our Department of Natural Resources, received an MVP grant. It was specific to Santuit Pond, but it came up with a lot of recommendations, and consultant came up with a lot of recommendations that are relevant to all areas of town. And in that case, they did assign the entities that should be implementing the recommendations that they came up with. However, I'm not sure it's clear how that report's going to make it from the shelf to the entities that are responsible for implementing that. So I just want to make sure that those recommendations are included as action steps in the comprehensive plan. Thank you.
I have to have a different color for everybody. Okay. And you talked about that a little bit, Evan, that the action steps, the plan is going to get devised where the action steps are quote unquote assigned to some department and and then it's up to the town manager to to say, go for it, right?
Often the implementation plans are coupled with an implementation committee, whether it be town staff or comprised of like a community-based implementation committee that is there to kind of monitor and make sure the actions get carried through. So that's an option we can consider as well.
Anything else on this matter? Not, we'll move on to the review of existing conditions. And I'm hoping to get through today housing, economy, and cultural heritage. So did everybody have a chance to read the housing one? Did we get any comments from the housing committee?
Alan is still working on his
Oh,
written comments.
okay.
So they're underway and we'll get them to Ashley and Caroline. But in the interim, I was thinking about just providing them the minutes from the meeting where Alan pretty much verbally gave them all his comments, but I did ask him to put them in writing. And he is doing that.
So, and, you want me to just go, Dennis, anything?
Well, let's go through it, then I.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I'll just start. I submitted comments on April 6th. I wanted the first sentence to be replaced to say Mashpee's housing development over the last half-century catalyzed a significant population growth. The way it's written now, it said that the population growth catalyzed the housing development, but actually in this town, it was you build it, they'll come. So the development caused the population growth.
That's why the Cape Cod Commission was formed.
Yeah, and the majority of this development has been as single-family detached homes. Under housing types, I thought that we should add the non-restricted condominium housing. There's a lot of condominium housing. There's actually density in town. They're just kind of hidden. Oak Hollow, where I live, Deer Crossing, Pheasant Run, and Quashnet Valley. They're nice little higher density neighborhoods. They're not too big, they're not too small, and they all have their own personality. Also, I was wondering if we could do a just back of the envelope density analysis of those places.
I think I've done that relatively recently, so yeah, we can provide that. I think they were all permitted as 4 units per acre, approximately 4 units per acre.
Yeah.
So Oak Hollow I have is 10 units per acre. If
There's
you-
some deviation in that. Like, there was a
Yeah.
bylaw at the time for the multifamily condo that was density limited at 4 dwelling units per acre, but I will confirm for the board.
Yeah, and I think that we should actually, use the assessor's records
Sure.
to do the actual density. And then, one of the exercises you can do about housing is actually go and look at density. Some places, look really good and you'd be surprised that it's 20 units per acre, Oak Hollow, it's deceiving because across the street is all open space.
Yep.
So it doesn't feel like 10 acres per unit because it's surrounded by open space, but. Also, under local affordable housing programs, I wanted a sum of how much money we've spent on community housing from the Community Preservation Committee. And we have a rental assistance and mortgage assistance. I think the program is at its end. But I have a feeling it was hundreds of thousands of dollars, and it'd be nice to know how many. It started with the Housing Authority and then switched to Human Services. They finished it up. But it'd be nice to know how many households benefited from that. And then our ADU bylaw, it'd be nice to know how many, even before and after our bylaw change, how many ADUs we have.
Not many.
I think you have almost 70,
Almost 70.
yeah, which is,
How many?
should be
70?
proud of. I think there's almost 70.
Yeah.
It's over 60, it's below 70.
I think prior to the bylaw change, it was low 60s, and then there have been like 7 to 10 that have come
Hey,
online.
so we might hit 70, that's great.
What are we going to do, maybe it doesn't bother anyone here, but when I hear that there's a small lot in Pompanesett, I'm not speaking of anything in particular, but somebody decides to build a separate garage and build the ADU over it, and let's say the garage and the ADU encompass 2,000 square feet, that's a house. That can be a house.
Do we have a square footage limit for the ADU?
The ADU can't exceed 40% of the gross floor area of the principal dwelling, and it can't be less than
40%.
300 square feet,
But there's no, but
and a
there's
maximum of 2 bedrooms.
a maximum of 2 bedrooms, but there's no, like, it can't be more than 800 square feet.
Correct. It's based on the square footage of the principal dwelling.
So if you had a huge principal dwelling, you could have a huge ADU.
That's
It's
correct.
something to think about,
Yeah.
is to
Yes.
put a numeric
Yes.
limit on the square footage.
The town of Sandwich does it in that approach, and I think it's capped at 900 square feet.
Many towns do it.
900,
Yeah.
okay.
The 40% language is an exact mirror of what the accessory apartment bylaw said when it
Yeah.
required a special permit. So we didn't deviate from what had existed previously, but we could certainly consider a maximum square footage for the ADU as opposed to some ratio.
That would be a better thing to do.
Yeah, I think there are other, regulatory opportunities that could be enhanced in our ADU bylaw as well.
I think this was an addition, Mashpee Village. I think that was we just missed that in the review. That's the 148 units of affordable rental housing located at 1 Wampanoag Drive off of Old Barnstable Road. It's actually the largest, with respect to land coverage or property, land area, it's the largest affordable rental housing development on the Cape.
Yeah.
But you'd never know it. Why? Oh, it has great site design and architecture is maintained. I can't say it's superior architecture, but it fits right in. If you fit it right in, it can make it work. Under new construction, there was a funding approval recently given for the feasibility study of 108 Commercial Street. And then I just updated a little bit about Mashpee Commons, the figures in Mashpee Commons, that it's permitted for 396 units of diverse housing, of which 96 units are affordable. And I said separately, Mashpee Commons has special permits allowing up to 100 housing units in a mixed-use residential commercial setting, of which blank have been constructed. So that's for Evan, our town planner, to confirm.
I believe it's 35.
35 affordable?
35 total units under that comprehensive permit. 55 total included in that first
No,
phase.
it's a special permit, it's not a comp permit.
Oh, you're talking about the 86
Yes.
special permit for Mashpee Commons. Okay, there were 100, I think, allowed there, but I'm not sure what exists in the ground.
Yeah,
I see.
and I think a quick email to them, they would answer that question for you. Because there are some, you can't tell. It's designed so nice, you can't tell that there's a lot of housing in there. Under existing conditions, I said impediments to affordable housing was polluted waters from past development booms, fragile and sensitive environment. Approximately 30% of our current housing stock is only used part of the year, and we have no full-time staff dedicated to affordable housing. And then I went into opportunities, I'm probably getting ahead of myself, but YIMBY and not NIMBY, right? Yes, in my backyard. There's a growing number of Mashpee properties ripe for redevelopment. There's an inventory of town-owned land that might be suitable for affordable housing. Something kind of newish is the Amazon effect, where commercial properties are starting to become vacant or run down, and they might be ripe redevelopment opportunities for residential. So the residential market is so hot right now that some developers are converting their commercial use to residential. And I don't know if that ends up still being considered commercial. because they rent them, or I don't know. And then I was looking for the examples of density, and one opportunity is Mashpee is seen as an investment opportunity. It's an investment community. And then I was hoping to include in this chapter, the historic population growth in Mashpee, whereas in 1870, there were 348 people here. And that kind of stayed in that area until 1950. 1960 was 867, and then it just, whoo. So if you just look at how it just jumps from 1,000, 3,000, 7,000, 13,000, 14,000, 15,000, it just like blossoms. I had some new comments, and they're mostly for Ashley, but, and I emailed them to Evan, and Ashley, I'm sure that Evan will just pass them on to you. There's some current data on housing cost burden from the Comprehensive Housing Affordability Strategy, CHAS, from US HUD, so I looked that up. I was hoping to add an population age distribution trend. I'd like to see over the last 5 decades how our age groups have changed. Have we always been heavy on, older adults? Or is there a trend that there used to be some young people here and then that population is dwindling? And then current population characteristics in Mashpee compared to county and the state for veterans and disabled persons. There's some communities that have a really high percentage of disabled persons, so when you're designing housing, you want to make sure there's a good percentage of accessible units. And it's nice to know what your percent veterans are in town. You might want to consider some veteran housing, or, you could get veteran support groups to help you create housing. We also were missing some race and ethnicity data, and Ashley and Evan, I didn't put this in my memo. Last minute thing, it'd be good to know what our percentage minority household is and how that compares to the county and the state. In our current LCP, it talks about the related income to these groups. It noted that poverty was higher for minority households, and it'd be good to know if that's still the case. And those are my comments.
All right, on the housing, you talk about redoing buildings.
Redevelop.
I don't see any in Mashpee, everything's new. Maybe in Hyannis, where they had a lot of your warehouses, but I don't understand why we say that, because there's not much.
How about some of the older, humble motel properties?
There's a few properties I got right on the top of my mind that I think
Okay.
are real, and because, I think, I really think specifically of the barn and Polar Cave and that section of that C2 commercial district. The properties across the street of 151 from Andy's Market, where they have the little cooking place. They're large parcels with small little retail facilities on the front, and the rear is like storage and stuff. Those are really great redevelopment of properties.
Yeah.
And with a few other smattings from the town in the Mary. What's that?
Women's workout, Route
The
130.
Women's Workout, which is actually being just contemplated for like an auto parts store, but it is a perfect opportunity. As well as the 348 Main Street property where Solar Rising is. They're, I think, comfortable in that facility, but it would be a good site for redevelopment. And also 100 Great Neck Road North, former Zachary site.
Right.
That's a huge parcel.
That would be really great, because what's the acreage on that?
It's more than 6, I believe.
Where's the
Huge.
good property, 151, across from the Andy supermarket?
Yeah.
I can't forget who owned it, but that was a lumber yard, and there's a lot of land behind there.
Yeah, so I think those are great sites for potential
Thinking
housing
about them,
opportunities.
one of those.
The other one is actually, you drive by this building all the time, heading towards Falmouth on 28. On the right-hand side, that Crane Herbs building.
Yeah.
Up on the hill.
Is that still in operation? Because that seems to be a decent opportunity as well.
It's a sweet entranceway, too. It's wooded, it's,
So those are the sites I have in my mind, Dennis.
Oh, I could have, because I'm trying to pick where.
So if you said to them, okay, keep your commercial space, but give us some housing, and we'll let you have the height, would we say yes to that? You know?
Good question.
Make it look really good with superior architecture and landscaping and, put in that wastewater treatment facility, right? Because you've hit a certain density. Then you're lowering the visual impact of some of these places and possibly the nitrogen impact, if you do it right. Lots to think about.
No doubt.
Anything else on housing? Now, this is just existing conditions.
I thought this was well done.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And remember, we got the $50,000 for the housing production plan, which is going to delve into this like way more.
Yeah. The goal for, my goal for the housing production plan, I don't know if you'll share this goal, but my goal for the housing production plan is to facilitate the pipeline of town-owned properties. Like the Affordable Housing Committee maintains a pipeline of projects. We're always kind of being reactive to opportunities as opposed to laying out a proper implementation plan for bringing these properties online. That's how I'd like to what I think would add significant value to our housing chapter of the LCP, which is going to cover a lot more issues than town-owned property and low-income housing. We're going to get into the moderate income, workforce housing, income ranges, where we can really focus on facilitating the town pipeline and the HPP in addition to other zoning opportunities.
I'm writing it down. Under Evan's priorities. All right. Anybody that would like to talk about, from the public that would like to talk about housing existing conditions? Ashley, did you have anything to say?
No, I'm really here just to listen to your comments and make note of everything so we can circle back on these chapters.
Great. All right, next chapter, economy. So I'll just start real quick. Again, the race and ethnicity data, the percent minority households on the Cape versus, in Mashpee versus the rest of the Cape and the state, and if there's still high poverty in that segment of our demographics. And then, again, I sent this stuff to Evan via email. There's a section in the economy section that talks about housing cost burden, so I gave you the most current figures. Also, it would be good to see the unemployment rates. I know that there was a huge spike in unemployment because of COVID, but it'd be interesting to see pre-COVID to during COVID and now to see what's going on. And also, there's this thing called economic characteristics from the U.S. Census American Community Survey. In the draft of the existing conditions, your graphic kind of covered over that narrative paragraph, so forgive me if it's already in there. But I found the most recent one, and I sent it to Evan even in Excel, and it talks about employment status, commuting, occupation, and industry. So you look at that data and you can tell how many people in Mashpee residents are employed in finance and in the arts and in healthcare. They're not necessarily employed in Mashpee, but there are residents. So if you are thinking of some type of new business in town, let's say 20% of your population works in healthcare, and there was a healthcare provider wanted to come in, you could say to them, oh, we have residents that have the experience and education to work for you, because no business wants to come into a town where they can't get employees. So that kind of data is good to know. Also, so in the existing conditions, the 2013 market assessment by Chesapeake is issued. So I was wondering if there's any newer market assessment that had captured the Amazon effect or COVID. And also, going around town, you see vacant commercial space. Now, there's a lot of reasons there can be, vacant commercial space. Maybe the owner doesn't want to rent it right now. I don't know. But there are several places in town. And again, that goes into leading up to like a redevelopment bylaw. If there's some place that's not functioning as it's built right now, maybe there's something that we could do to help them redevelop into to use that land that's already developed rather than development on green space. Any comments on from anybody else on the existing conditions on economy?
Just, were you looking for something different than the unemployment table that's in here?
What page are you on?
Unnumbered page
I saw that.
3.
I was on that thing there.
There's a table that shows Mashpee versus Massachusetts for unemployment.
It's high, right, John?
Yeah, it's generally higher.
Does it have, what year does it start?
It's from 17 to 21,
Right, so I was hoping for something before.
before 2017.
Or is this here?
I'll look at it. If it's, actually, if it's in there and I misspoke, then that comment is addressed. And I think, I wanted to know what was happening in 2022. Okay, so maybe it's already in there. Thank you, John. Anything else? I don't have
A somber assessment.
Yeah.
I hope we'll have we're going to have a couple of focus groups with businesses. We had one with chamber members. We're hoping to have a few more with chamber members plus businesses.
Yeah.
And then, EDIC we haven't met with them, consultants have. Anything from you, Evan?
No, I think one thing I wanted to note as I'm kind of going through and defining assessment, and my plan for addressing the assessments of these chapters, the economic development chapter, specifically the action plans, is one that needs particular attention. There was a lot of focus placed in the economic development chapter on the industrial park and, making the economic development committee, now the DIC, more robust, but it didn't really get at actions to facilitate economic growth that's consistent with the town's vision and priorities. So I just think particular attention needs to be paid on our action plans and implementation plan for economic development. Because it's my professional opinion that the economic development chapter could have been more robust in 1998 and less romantic in its approach and more data-driven.
No, it's very valid. It's very valid. There's nothing there.
Yeah, it just, it was a lot of hopeful actions that didn't, develop a pamphlet,
Yeah.
Either they're going to be an economic development corporation or they're not.
So I think we can certainly address the action plan in a more robust and thoughtful way.
Public comment?
Lynn Barbie, Surf Drive. As a retired union organizer, I would be remiss to not suggest that if you're going to examine employment and unemployment, please do a survey of wages.
Okay.
I mean,
So I
particularly,
think we can get that from the census data, right, Ashley?
Yeah.
well, it might be a little bit different
Okay.
now. I mean, that's what people are
I can't hear
saying.
Lynn, so I'm
So-
not sure what she said.
So see if the-
Wages.
Bring the mic forward and see if she can hear you.
So what I was talking about is if we're looking at employment pre-COVID and post-COVID, we should also look at wages because in theory, people are saying wages have gone up because people are saying that they have to pay more in order to get help. And so it would be interesting to know, to go to local businesses and say, has that had an impact on you?
So Ashley, did you catch that, a wage analysis?
Yeah,
Of the local workforce,
I mean, there is data available through American Community Survey on a continuous basis, and we can certainly look at what's there in terms of wage information. You don't, they do these interim reviews through ACS that you don't have to wait for the census, to fill in that information in between. Well, certainly we can look at what's available.
Great.
Drive around, look at all the signs outside of all the businesses.
Let's say, yeah, now hiring.
Help want, yeah.
Right.
No, I'm just,
Yeah, yeah. Be nice to our staff, everybody's helpers, okay, everybody, for the whole summer. You have to be super nice, tip
Thank
well.
you.
Yes, Karen?
You know what I would like, maybe it's because I'm new and I don't know everything here, but I would really like to have like a flip chart tutorial on what is it, I tried to do some figures the other day about workforce people. I don't know how they can possibly afford to live here.
They can't.
I mean, I don't know if 1,800 a month is a reasonable rental.
No way.
I'd be happy to
Oh,
talk
you
to
mean
I mean,
like
I
an
just-
affordability analysis
Yes.
of what a typical household in Mashpee could afford for rent or a
Yes.
mortgage?
Yes.
Or like that household budget?
Well,
Yeah,
I mean, a hypothetical, what would be realistic, what they earn gross, and they can't spend supposedly more than 30% of their net income or gross income?
Gross.
gross.
Gross income. All right, and you start looking at that, and just
For
try to play with
housing,
numbers,
right.
your housing, and they can't afford it. I would love somebody to show me how we can build affordable housing, and they can afford, quote, affordable housing, and they can afford to live there. Because we're saying that 43% of our economy is tourism. So what percentage of that 43% is made up of people who man the stores, who do the kind of service work that we need to keep this tourism going here? Could somebody do that, like Evan or?
So there's a ton of,
I can certainly
there's a
certainly know
ton of.
what my experience is. but we
Oh,
can-
there's a
we can
lot
think
of stuff
about it.
out there.
Yeah, and you're hearing more and more about, instead of just affordable housing, but affordable living.
Yeah, let's not
Right,
even
because
talk
it's
about
not,
that.
it's not necessarily.
What's
affordable.
the-
It's
what's the cap?
Attainable housing.
Yes.
Yeah,
That's, yeah.
But it's kind of like, how much, I mean, the government says, they want to cap housing costs of your income to 30%. Well, what's that cap for childcare? Healthcare costs, food, clothes, entertainment,
Gas.
gas.
Thank God for my Prius
I
right
know,
now.
Right.
one of the meetings, we said affordable housing, I said, we should find out how much people make before we set
Yeah.
affordable housing.
yes,
If the
Right,
average person
right.
makes $40,000, they're not gonna afford a $350,000 home that they're telling me it's affordable.
yeah, 30%'s the figure
Right,
that's long gone.
like you're
by
looking
board.
at, now you're getting to like, what's the wage gap?
Yeah, I mean.
It's- yeah, yeah.
So we can actually build some houses that
That-
can take care of these people.
yeah, that's exactly what I'm trying to say.
And I don't know if it was this group or another group, I don't know, but
This might be an
I,
opportunity for the housing production plan as well.
yeah.
That you know.
But I did hear, don't know where I heard it, and I'm sorry if I'm stealing somebody's idea, but it was some community, or there was a thought to give perks to a business. The town would give them perks if they brought in high-paying jobs.
Yeah.
And back in the day, the Cape Cod Commission used to do an analysis that involved that. I don't know if it's in the current RPP. But they would do an analysis on if a company was coming in, if they were offering, they had less mitigation to pay if they were offering high-paying jobs. So, because they knew if somebody was coming in with low-paying jobs, it'd be a burden on the community for housing and other services.
But I can see the flip of that.
Yeah?
You're only gonna get people developing houses that high-paying job can afford, and they're gonna forget about
Yeah.
the lower income person.
Anything else from anybody? right. And the last one, cultural heritage.
Apologies too for sending duplicate economic development chapters.
Oh,
My late follow-up with the appropriate chapter in your emails.
That's
So-
okay, I started reading the same one twice.
I've been here before. All right, so my comments were from April 6th. I haven't added any more, but add the map and the list of all ancient ways in Mashpee. And then as an index, take the complete 1998 chapter and put it as an index for the new. It's just so full of information,
Yeah.
and it is kind of like the history chapter. I do have to say that I was reading the regional policy plan goals from the 2018 regional policy plan made by the Cape Cod Commission, and they completely missed Aboriginal rights in their setting up their goals. It's more like when they talk about cultural heritage, they're really talking about brick and mortar buildings,
Yeah.
and places.
Yeah,
And they forgot people, they forgot that historic, and maybe they have it someplace else, but we'll need to go a little bit above and beyond in this chapter.
Yeah.
And it might be nice to share with Weston and Sampson the shellfish regulations.
Sure.
That's language that was, yeah. Any board members have any comments?
I just have some, at Saturday's meeting, that's my part, I like open space and everything. But I got the feeling that was gonna be going against housing, affordable housing, because people, we're gonna keep this open space, gonna keep this open space. And I was thinking, well, if we keep all these open spaces, where the hell are we gonna put affordable housing? I was thinking maybe buy land, but keep it recreational, but carve out certain pieces so we can put affordable housing in those open space land, but it struck me funny,
I think
that
it's
went against housing.
Yeah, I think it's important that, not every site in the town is suitable for high-density development.
Right.
There are some, especially in consideration of future wastewater plants. So we need to balance what's available and unprotected with our, priorities for providing housing for the community. And those opportunities are relatively limited, so you at least have some focus on how you can assess the potential for new housing or redevelopment for housing. And then, less the remainder of unprotected property, and define that in your open space acquisition plan, and that kind of lays it out for you. The APCC Grow Smart Max actually laid it out pretty clearly for us. At least help us, focus our eyes on what priorities could be. But it's certainly a balance,
All right,
because,
No, I completely agree with you, Dennis. It's all going to come down to that.
yeah,
How do we balance those two priority needs?
that's what I was like, I like open space, but I'm also concerned about
Yeah, I
my
think-
son, he can't live here.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
hard. It's really hard.
And John, you got young,
If we keep this conversation going with both pieces at one time, then it works.
Yeah.
Right.
You're not ignoring one or the other.
All right.
If you talk about them both at the same time, this applies here, and this fits there, most people would understand that and accept it.
Yeah, if you peel them off separately, that's where it ends up,
That's what I felt like I was doing.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Karen?
I hope this will be taken in a good way, because I do mean it in a good way. The town has not decided what the goals in the updated LCP are or will be at this point. However, some of the paperwork that we've received from Weston and Sampson, and this was from last weekend, lists the goals, tells us what the goals are according to the Cape Cod Regional Policy Plan. And I don't think that was appropriate, because at this point, we're just asking for input from the public that will help to identify what are the best goals for Mashpee, given Mashpee's unique cultural heritage and character. So, as John Cotton always says, with that said, I'd like to make a motion that the planning board, at this time, acknowledge that it has not adopted the goals of the Cape Cod Regional Policy Plan, nor has the planning board approved approved any of the goals of the Mashpee LCP update.
I don't think that's what the document said, did it?
Pardon me?
So she's made a motion just to make a public statement that we haven't adopted any goals at this point for the LCP, that we're still looking for input.
I kind of thought that's what we were doing here, trying to develop them.
We're not at the point of identifying goals and actions yet.
No,
but
we're still
laying out the
collecting.
existing conditions. That's what
I
our
only
RFP
say that because of this piece of paper here. It's almost as if these are the goals, and I don't want there to be a misinterpretation.
I felt, when I read that, I felt like, why are we even doing this? Just take the Cape Cod Commission's regional policy plan and say, here it is. You know, we should wait till we get our plan and then hope the Cape Cod Commission accepts it, you know?
So there's a motion, is there a second?
I second.
Any discussion? So this is just to publicly acknowledge that the planning board has not adopted any goals for the LCP work at this time, that we want to publicly state that we're still taking input.
Right. I think there was some confusion at the workshop when we saw the goals. I mean, I was confused, and I talked to at least one person, and she was confused as well. So, I mean, here were the answers here.
Any discussion? So all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
No,
Anybody opposed?
opposed.
I don't understand. I don't understand the problem.
So,
Okay. Do you want to abstain or vote no?
I'm going to vote no.
All right, so that's 3-2, the motion carries. So Ash,
Could I just clarify?
Somebody, please.
So at the first workshop, so we've talked with Evan about how to approach these workshops. And Evan had a desire, and Evan, please jump in and correct me if I'm misspeaking.
You go ahead. I
Evan
thought
had
we
a
discussed this at our
desire
last
to
meeting.
use the systems approach to conversation, public conversation and public input under the regional policy plan. So the approach that we put together and brought the information to you prior to the meetings was to simply explain the regional policy plan system framework as a jumping off point for Mashpee residents who attended these meetings to have discussions around these particular ideas. There is no intent or implication to push those goals forward. If they don't align with the conversation, they won't end up being goals, but we needed to provide a framework for people to talk around. We needed to give them a concept and an understanding of how the regional policy plan is organized, how those systems are organized, and what each system means in terms of the regional policy plan in order to guide conversation. So there was no, and it's the same way we did the first workshop, it's the same information that's provided, and it's clearly stated at the top of the document that as guidance, they're the regional policy plan system organization and goals, and they're only intended, as talking points, that we had to give people somewhere to start. And because we're following their system approach, we provided them with the information in the regional policy plan for what those systems are.
Yes, Ashley, and I agree that the definition is good. And I think we have agreed to go with the systems. It's just I've never seen goals being published on a piece of paper where you're asking for public comment, open public comment, so that we can develop goals. That's all. So I just think the planning board needs to be clear that it's on some of this paperwork, but we have not adopted them officially, that we are still taking comment, and there's going to be even more public participation before we settle down on the goals. I do have a chart that I've made in my home computer that has a list of all the systems and the goals. And I was hoping to send it to the planning department, because you're typing in your assessments, you're typing in the goals from the LCP. I was hoping you could add a column to what I've started so that we can compare the RPP goals to the 1998 LCP goals. I think we might find that there's a lot of similarities, and that the ones from the 1998 LCP are just tailored to Mashpee and don't necessarily conflict. So.
Mr. Beltran, our intern, has actually built a
Oh, good.
compilation of those two goals. I mean, one is clearly a regional focus with a higher level focus. Mashpee gets at local issues. So, just, that's it.
So you're already a step ahead then.
But that's just for illustration purposes, because we haven't come up with the goals yet.
Yes.
Right. And as I'm reading some of these assessments, I'm like, oh, that goal needs some work, and some of them don't. Some of them are still pretty relevant.
Yes.
Anything else on cultural heritage? If anything from the public on that, on cultural heritage? I think I'm going to stop there. All right, and we'll go on to the survey review. I'm glad that Ashley is on the line. I was wondering, Ashley, if you could, last time you were with us, you were talking about some literature about best practices for surveys. I was wondering if you could send that to us.
Sure. Is there anything, I mean, there's a tremendous amount of survey literature out there and best practices. I know that Evan did send you some links to documents or to information. Are you looking for something in addition?
I was looking for what you were talking about. You sounded like you had identified some that Weston and Sampson uses. I mean, I could do I could do a search too, but I just was.
I wasn't speaking specifically to
Okay.
any typical or standardized document that we use. There's just a lot of public information out there about best practices for survey construction. Certainly, if there's more information that you're interested in, I can pull some more sources for you in addition to what Evan provided.
That's okay. I think I misunderstood you at our last meeting. I thought you had said something different. So that's.
I apologize if
No.
I said something confusing.
Nope. I think your point is that there's some basic do's and don'ts. And you're aware of them, and that's what you're going to use when you help us design the survey.
Correct.
So we don't have any draft survey to look at this time.
Correct. We do have, we've gone through the recent surveys, and we've begun identifying opportunities for being more consistent with survey design best practices. We've developed a matrix, if you will, of questions with, how we'd like to ask the question and why we ask it in that particular way. And we would be prepared to commit to our next meeting, delivering to you a comprehensive draft survey along with that matrix, so you have a clear understanding of what changes we are proposing and why, and any additional questions we think would be important to ask the community for this survey.
Great. Before the next meeting, we'll get a chance to see that, so we can come prepared.
It'll be for your next packet, Mike, yes.
So we're going to wait till after the third workshop,
issue.
right? Because, all right. And is the purpose of the survey to help us develop goals or prioritize strategies, or?
I think it's to supplement a lot of the findings we've had from our other engagement opportunities, but also to get at specific goals and policies, actions that would be
What do you
supported.
mean supplement?
in addition to everything we're learning from
Yeah.
community engagement activities, it's an additional opportunity to gain public opinion
Okay.
feedback on.
From people who couldn't get to the
Exactly.
listening sessions.
Exactly.
Aren't those sheets the way to do that, though?
That's certainly supplementary to our workshops, but the goal of the survey is, I think, to capture public opinion from a much broader
Well, I mean,
cross-section of the community.
I've used surveys to help prioritize the concerns of a community.
Yeah, there's certainly, we'll get at, levels of priority, levels of importance for various,
Okay.
defined actions. And we're utilizing the previously issued surveys as the skeleton for this. So you'll see a lot of consistency with prior issuance of surveys that were issued with clear, some questions clearly being contrary to what is survey best practice. And we think we have
that.
solutions to get at the purpose and intent of the question without being contrary to best practice.
And how would you garner supplemental information? Would you have an other box?
Other boxes certainly an option, but
Okay.
I'm not looking at the survey in
Oh,
front of me.
sorry.
so
All right.
I'm more than happy to get into the details of this when we present it to the board.
Well, I know, well, goals, right, you can use survey to like try to set goals, you can use them to prioritize your actions. Okay.
Aren't we using it to get opinions and feedback and comments from the people the other 15,000 people that don't show up at the Saturday sessions?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So that's different. That's like the forms, the forms that they have the boxes that are open. That's what we were supposed to use for that. And I think we should do a huge push out for that at some point, right? So to get people's ideas,
Yep.
we have something like that. If you want to grade stuff on a survey, what I'm afraid of is if we don't push out those supplemental forms with the big boxes that you write in your ideas, if we don't push those out before the survey, we might miss some comments to be rated on the survey.
I think that's up to the design of the,
It's up to us.
well, it's up to as Ashley said, there's a way to do this,
Yeah.
to get the information appropriately. They're the experts, let them design the survey, bring it to us. we get to
You
look at it.
see a need for these 4 workshops that we've had, plus the future focus group. You see a need for more outreach to the community for that information.
Without question.
Yeah,
Okay.
Me too.
Otherwise, we're going to build a local comprehensive plan based on
150 people.
60 people,
Yeah, 60.
Yep, okay.
which would be a mistake.
I don't know, on the survey, I'm thinking some people get that, they look at, I'm not gonna write down. I think it's easier to ask question, 1 to 5 or whatever. But I know a lot of people, if they saw that, they're say, well, they're not gonna write something. That they're easy to check, and then we can figure out what they want. I think a survey should be simpler than
We agree.
big blocks.
I agree with you, Dennis. I just don't think people are going to have a box here and start writing their thoughts. They'll just say, wait a minute, I don't want to seem foolish.
Yeah.
Or, I don't really know too much about this, but just give me boxes and I'll tell you what I like and what I don't like.
And we could ask the questions on the survey to get what we really want from them. I mean, the surveys, what you put in it, you get back,
Well, Ask
Can I
Ashley.
offer you some information
Yes, Ashley, go ahead.
around your conversation, what I'm hearing you say? So we want to design the survey in such a way that we don't lose people's attention and focus. People have a certain amount of time that they're willing to dedicate to something like this, so we don't want to go excessively long, and we don't want excessively complicated questions either. We want to give them the ability to read a relatively short question and then give them a range of choices to choose from. So instead of ranking from most important to least important, which kind of pits certain things against each other. Dennis, like what you were saying, where you have to choose between open space and housing. We don't want to give people that feeling in asking them a question like that. So what we're trying to do is ask a very succinct question and then give them a range of options to pick from. So are you very supportive, somewhat supportive,
Right.
supportive, somewhat not supportive, not supportive? And that gives people a range to gauge, their support and interest in specific topics. And we're going to cover them by category. So we're going to look at some housing questions, and we might ask, 4 or 5 housing questions or 3 or 4 housing questions. And then we're going to look at natural resources, and we're going to ask, 4 and not sure
Right.
on the numbers yet, but 3 to 5 general questions about the level of support for certain things under each of these categories to gauge people's appreciation for what the town currently has or what they don't have that we might want to move forward as a possibility. We don't want to get super specific. We want to stay generally high level. If we get too detailed, we will lose people. If we get into the weeds, they won't understand where we're going with a lot of these questions. So the idea being that if we get general support for recreational facilities, then we know going forward as we start to work with the community to formulate goals and actions around recreational facilities, we have a general understanding of what the level of support for those types of activities are. And then you can formulate those specific goals and those specific actions based on not just that information, but also the existing conditions information that has attempted to draw out what the town has and what the town doesn't have. So that's kind of the formula that we're working towards, or the approach that we're looking at.
I like that approach.
So, so I hear gauge level of support. That's
Basically,
the
and like
purpose
I said,
of
we
the
don't want to
survey.
rank things. We don't want to necessarily prioritize things, because there's an inherent feeling when you start to do that I have to choose one or the other,
Right.
which may become a reality further down the road when the town has to figure out, where it invests its time and energy and money. But right now, for this bigger picture, we want to talk about what the town supports, what the town doesn't support, to make sure that actions that we formulate are in line with that general temperature that we've taken of the community.
That was good.
Okay.
Thank you, Ashley.
You're welcome.
And for our next meeting, we might have the draft survey or some type of draft format of a survey to look at. I was also hoping that we could put in our packet, Ashley, last time you were here, you provided a PowerPoint presentation. If we could get
Yes.
that put into our packet for next time and think about that, because Weston and Sampson did ask us to think about a couple of things about the format of the LCP, because they might start writing stuff soon. And Ashley, if you could just get us that stuff, for our packets usually go out on Friday before our Wednesday meeting. And because of public records laws, we need to have those materials available to the public in printed form by our meeting. So the easiest way for that to all happen is if you guys give us the PowerPoint ahead of time. Is that something you can do from this point on?
Sure.
Yeah, that's great. And also, I don't know, Evan, did you ask Ashley about that, the April data in electronic form?
April data in electronic form.
So anyways, I emailed Evan a request to pass on to you. The April workshop, you gave us the data in chart form.
Okay.
I was hoping for a copy of it in Excel, if that's possible.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. That's why I haven't gotten it.
I think I did pass it along.
Sorry.
I'm fairly confident that I had. but-
So any other comments before we go to future community engagement dates and activities? Oh, Rob.
and it's primarily for Ashley or Evan. Most surveys that I've taken have a demographic section, and I think it's extremely important that that demographic section capture those that are taking the survey. And my question to Ashley, do they ever weight the demographic input to the survey? So say if half the survey is done by retirees and the other half are, divided among others, is there any kind of a weighting factor in assessing the survey?
So we do have demographic information at the beginning of the survey. It's very high level and fairly general. And you have to keep in mind that these are not statistically significant surveys where we're going into an in-depth analysis of data. So we use the demographic information to understand, the people to understand who has answered the survey. But in this type of situation, we don't want to weight one population or subset of a population's answers over another. It's just, useful information to understand who we heard from, but certainly we're not going to take more value in a particular answer to a question because a certain age group or a certain, income group or something. And we don't even ask income questions like that. We just basically ask you, are you a year-round resident? Are you a seasonal resident? How long have you lived here? What age group are you in? And then we don't go beyond that because it's not statistically important to the answers. We don't want to turn people off by asking too personal of a question where they start to, say, I don't want to answer this, and then they don't finish the survey.
All right, thank you.
So Ashley, I just want to let you know that the current survey I'm working on, the demographic information's at the end.
I read that in some of the best
And
practice
that's
literature
an
too.
option as well,
We can do
to
that.
put it at the end.
That way, if they don't want to fill it out, they're not turned off right away. You get some answers.
Yeah.
Right, and the way we're approaching this survey is to do it as an online tool and also have paper copies available, and you can do it in a way where some questions are optional and some questions are required. So you could put in the demographic questions as optional. If they don't get answered, the survey is still valid and still can be submitted. That's not really the driving force behind what we're looking for. So there are ways to kind of get around if people are uncomfortable with answering those questions.
Are people signing these surveys, or are these anonymous?
They're anonymous. I mean, there's no value in having people supply an email or a name unless they wanted to. You could make it an optional question, although we find that people are more likely to answer anonymous surveys. They're more ready to just, go through and click those boxes and not provide a name or an email. And it's not very important information for the purposes of what this survey is intended to achieve.
Thank you.
I had an idea, but it's kind of late now. It would have been nice to send it to the high school children, like a push-down version, but have them have to bring it home and get signed by the parents. And the parents could say, oh, survey. But it's kind of late. I
Remember
was
the
thinking about
report
that.
cards? Yeah.
And nothing. Too bad we couldn't give like an ice cream cone for everybody that returns a survey or something.
We've discussed incentivizing
Yeah,
it
we
in some
talked about-
manner, but
we
we
did talk about
would
it.
need donations for such a thing, but we could do that. We could incentivize the survey.
So we did a housing survey in Yarmouth. Within 2 weeks, we got 354 responses. So, and then it's like dried out. It's like, boom.
Yeah.
So it's almost like you do a push and like everybody's, and then it's like dribbles off, so. Anything else on the survey? Do you want to do public comment on the survey? Go ahead, Lynn.
Once again, Lynn Barbie. This came up the last time when she was here. They wanted 500 people. And I just want to point out that the old survey, and I'm not talking about the contents, but it's 6 pages. And they had 662 people respond to it. So 6 pages is, and somebody I know just sat down and did it and took a 15 minutes. That's not a long time. So I think, we want to have the right questions, but we shouldn't be assuming that it's got to be really short, because this is 6 pages and they got a lot of results. So I think a lot of people will do it online. I know a lot of people where I live don't do a lot of stuff on the internet. So we will want to, I think, have maybe copies at the library where people can fill it out and leave it in a box. We can have the senior center, places where people congregate, we can do that, and we can make a big push for it. So I think it'll be a very valuable thing, and I look forward to it. Thank you.
All right, that brings us to future community engagement dates and activities. I think, Mike, did you have some dates for were you working on dates for like the men's club, or was that Rob?
I don't have dates, but I was working on asking if those
Oh.
folks would be interested in.
Having a focus group?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was going to try to gather a list of people, groups that would be willing to have us or have something.
So,
And
okay.
then bring it back, and then we would decide whether we want to do it and when we do it.
So we have a stakeholders list. Maybe we can share that with everybody on the board, because we have 2 new members, and we did this a while ago. So let's get the stakeholders list to everybody again and see if we had any holes.
Sure.
Sound good?
Sounds good.
I think June 20, so I'm going to get into dates now, and if anybody has dates for any kind of community event. The Mashpee fireworks, I think that's June 24th. And people go ahead of time, and they have picnics, they have picnic dinner with their family, and so it might be a good place, not so much to gather information, but to pass out information about it.
Yeah.
Maybe like smaller little pieces with the date of the 23rd and the QR code and the website and all that stuff. The Mashpee Wampanoag Tribe powwow is July 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, and we got permission to be a nonprofit table
Oh, good.
on Friday and Saturday. I don't think Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, but I think we're going to cover Friday and Saturday. So if you're around the 1st or the 2nd, and you want to come in and sign up for some hours to be at the table, that'd be great. The next Sunday is I forget what they call it. I call it a general membership meeting, but it's not what it's called. But the Mashpee Wampanoag Tribe has their monthly meeting. So we were thinking that was a good time to have the focus group there.
It's the 10th.
It's the 10th. And Ashley, I don't know if Weston and Sampson is available. The tribal meeting is from 2 to 4, so I was thinking of being there from 12 noon to 2. Maybe starting something formal at 12:30. It's a little tight, but I think it's a big opportunity because people travel into Mashpee for the powwow. And then there's the 4th of July, and people kind of stay, so so I don't know. I think, Evan, you're available,
Yes, I am.
right? And so Ashley, if you could let us know if Weston and Sampson can come down, or maybe we don't need them, I don't know. And lastly, I was targeting, and I need to know the confirmation of this right away, I was targeting June 30th as an all-virtual summit. At 11 a.m., is that date confirmed, or?
We've discussed it, and
Okay.
we can do it. We haven't necessarily pinned down a date. We do need to look at the scope
Okay.
of our agreement and potentially discuss a contract modification to make sure, because we're starting to run up against budgetary concerns, because we're doing a lot of additional engagement with Weston and Sampson. So we're going to do it. We're going to commit to it. I just need to look at the procurement-related documents.
Okay, so June 3rd.
What is it?
June, it's an all virtual.
So it's a listening session, but it's virtual.
So
Yes.
what I suggested was to have, our workshop in April, which was the SWOT analysis, right? So you have virtual summits go really quick. They go real quick. You need like half the time because people are at their computer and engaged. And if they need to do a break, they just break. You don't have to like shut down the whole place for 15, 20 minutes, right? So do the SWOT, so do the introduction, go into breakout groups on Zoom. I don't know if anybody's been on a Zoom and go into a breakout group. You go into a breakout group and you do the SWOT analysis in small groups. You come back, you report, and then you would have a choice as to which system to break out into on the second half. And people would have to choose. Community systems, natural systems, built systems. I've got some feedback for people who are basically in their homes for different reasons, and they requested an all-virtual summit, so I think we should do it if we can.
Yeah,
But
we're going to plan on it.
But it sounds like June 30th is too soon.
It's probably too soon, just
Okay,
in
good.
consideration of getting the information out there.
Yep. I mean, I'd like to do it before the final July workshop, just so that you have all your information by then.
Okay.
Any other events in the community that we can go to and promote the LCP?
The Mashpee Lake Wakeby Management Committee, Advisory Committee, I can't remember exactly how they call themselves. That may be it.
Well, there you go.
They have an annual meeting coming up, I think, on June 25th, and they invited the department to be there for an engagement opportunity focus group with them. So we're going to take them up on that offer.
Now, so are you guys going to go a little bit early or a little bit later?
Probably details to be worked out, but we want
Yeah.
to be there for the totality of the meeting, where it doesn't interfere with their business. So
Yes.
I think it's noon to,
It starts at
2.
noon, I'm looking at it.
so we'll be there, early to set up and
I
be
guess I'm a
available.
member, I got an email.
So that's the one in the very short term that we'll intend on being at. That's not the powwow and the other identified engagement opportunities. And I was discussing with Mr. Beltran that we'd like to get a table at Stop and Shop maybe once a week.
Oh,
and a table
yeah.
in the Commons or a table at Roach Brothers, to catch some passersby.
That'd be
He
great.
and I are going to work on that, and that's
Yeah.
going to be his.
So I'll give you a couple of hints. Friday night, because we did Girl Scout cookies there for years and food pantry drives. Friday night is a little bit, everybody's rushed, Saturday morning, big high traffic. Sunday morning, get everybody after church.
And any Saturday morning up at Heritage, there's Little League, T-ball, there's all kinds
Yeah.
of things going
Yeah.
on.
Oh, okay.
So he's looking at the community calendar. He's looking at other calendars that we don't have control over, and he's building himself a list of opportunities.
Go get
All
them,
right.
Alex.
Well, just let us know, because I'm sure that just like we volunteered as facilitators at events, we'll jump in and help out.
Sounds good.
We could use the school billboard we should start using that saying
Actually, that's a great idea.
when
Yeah.
the meetings are and everything. 'Cause
Now that
a lot of people
school's
drive up and
closed.
down.
You guys aren't looking at the sign. We've had that for each of the meetings.
Yeah. Really, I just saw the
Look,
graduates.
you got
Well, yeah,
you got to take a picture of
yeah.
it and put it on the website.
They're not as exciting as some of the
between
ones
the
with images,
graduation
but
pictures?
it's been on there. I promise.
Very good.
I drive by to check.
Good for you.
That's awesome. All right, and the other thing is, do you guys want to have additional meetings to review the existing conditions, or you just want to go through them at our regular Wednesday meetings?
I'd rather go to regular meeting,
Okay.
especially in the
Yes,
summertime.
done.
Yeah.
Strike that. Read ahead.
I'm okay with that.
Any other last comments about the LCP? Anybody from the public? Anything from Ashley?
Guess not.
Sorry, sometimes it takes a minute to find mute. No, I am good, thank you.
Thanks, Ashley.
Thank you, Ashley.
Thank you, Ashley.
Thank you all, have a good night.
You too.
All right. Okay. Next thing, discussion and possible vote regarding the clear cutting at 6458, 54 Algonquin Ave and 420 Nathan Ellis Highway, and referral to the Cape Cod Commission. So anything you can report to us?
No new information. The Cape Cod Commission has all of the information they need to render a jurisdictional determination, but we have not yet had a decision from them. So I'll keep you apprised, and as soon as I hear from the commission, you'll know.
So at our last meeting, we took a vote to ask the Cape Cod Commission if we had jurisdiction to refer it to them. Okay. Under the Clean Water Initiative, nitrogen-sensitive area, Paul Colombo. I'd like to recognize Paul Colombo. He was here at our last meeting, and he did public comment about an initiative in town about declaring the town a nitrogen-sensitive area. There's some stuff in your packet. There was a DEP letter and fact sheet, and before that, right before that, there was a document, what was the title of that document?
Coordinated approach to reducing nitrate loading.
Thank you. Right, and unfortunately, I didn't write on it, here starts this
I know, I
matter,
didn't-
I'm
It was
sorry.
all touched together.
But anyways, I'd like to recognize Paul, and so he's from the Conservation Commission, and they had some activity on this. So go right ahead. Use the mic, bring it right up, thanks.
The last time I met with you, I was under the impression that the Conservation Commission would be meeting with the Select Board, and that was June 6th. That agenda did not take place. I received a telephone call from Terry Cook. She was under the impression that it was my request.
Yeah. So tap it, is it?
That's not on here.
No.
All right.
Would you guys mind if Paul
No,
came
come
up
over
and
here.
sat? Why don't you just come up and sit, and I think our mics work.
That one not work right there?
It's not working. Nothing's working. And just tap them to make sure they're on.
Lynn used it too often, it ran out of batteries.
Lynn, you're getting blamed for using all the batteries on the mic.
Broke the microphone.
So talk right into the mic, because I know everybody at home wants to hear about this.
Okay, I'll start over.
Good.
The last time I was here, I was under the impression that we were going to have an agenda item on June 6th with the Select Board. Our agent, Drew McManus, was away on vacation, and that agenda item just didn't get set up. I'm hopeful that at the next Select Board meeting, I think is the 27th, I think the 27th, that agenda item will be there. To refresh your memory, the Conservation Commission did vote to ask the Board of Selectmen to have an ongoing agenda item for declaring the town of Mashpee a nutrient-sensitive area. And since the last time I was here, there's been an awful lot of new developments from the state. Mass DEP has issued some information that Title V regulations are going to be revamped, possibly as soon as this fall. And it's a window of opportunity that I think we really have to focus on. When we look at our plans, whether it be Phase 1 and hopefully Phase 2, it does leave a lot of the rest of the town just out of the loop. And there are a lot of issues coming from other parts of the town other than what's been identified as Phase 1 or Phase 2. So this is something that I would like to see kept on the agenda each and every time that the Select Board meets. And I would like to see all boards and commissions with regulatory powers to be at those meetings, even if there's nothing to report out, just so that it doesn't fall by the wayside. There's going to be a public hearing on June 24th in Boston, and that public hearing is on the Clean Water State Revolving Fund. And they're going to look at the proposed tier system, and there's an awful lot of funding in that that could be earmarked for the installation of IA systems, which is really what I think we have to look at when we talk about being outside of proposed Phase 1 and 2. The rest of the town is also contributing to the problem. It's just not those two areas that have been focused so far. One of the biggest things that, it's a takeaway that I had from the conservation meeting, when Glenn Harrington made his presentation, there's an unknown factor as to what the TMDL target would be for potential installation of IA systems. Could we meet the TMDL? That's something that we just don't know unless we do some modeling to find out. And Glenn mentioned having, I believe it was Brian Howe's group, to possibly look at a model run of some type to give us a little bit more information. There's a lot of work to be done. It's not just something that, okay, let's declare this town nutrient sensitive and let the corrections begin. If it was that easy, it would be great, but it's not. My goal in speaking with you people is to hopefully get you on board with the momentum that we've started with the Conservation Commission and bringing this to the attention of the Select Board and keeping it there. I think Carol Sherman did a good job. Before the holidays, we met, and then we haven't been back. And we need to get back, and we need to get back every single time that Select Board meets. And that's my whole goal. I don't go away easy, so I'm hoping on the 27th that we'll be on that docket for the Select Board. I would love to see the Planning Board there with us. I would love to see the Zoning Board there with us, the Sewer Committee, all of the people that were there at that previous meeting. There is nothing, as far as I'm concerned, that's more important to this community right now. We have to get focused on this.
You know, you said about the modeling system.
Yes.
They're already doing one in Katuitt and a bunch of places.
Oh, tests, field tests?
The
Yeah.
field test, but I went 20 years ago to that place near where we went a couple months ago.
The
Yeah,
test site in
the test
Barnstable
site.
County, test site on the base, right?
Yeah, and they were trying to get them systems approved by the state. I went like a couple months ago, and they're still trying to get these systems approved by the state. They're doing modeling, but nothing seems to happen. I don't understand. They seem to work, but how come it's taking so long for the state to grant these systems so I can put one in my yard?
Sure.
You know, it makes me crazy.
The state actually does have a list on their website of systems that are approved by the state, and it's quite lengthy. Systems are also quite expensive, and they all vary in the amount of nitrogen that they're able to denitrify out. The more you pay, then the better it works. And some people claim that in homes that are seasonal, they don't work as well. There's workarounds for that as well. It's like having a car and not changing the oil. You know, you've got to maintain your systems, and you've got to keep them operative. Of course, if there aren't people living there, that becomes an issue. But as I mentioned to Glenn when he came to conservation, they've got property management companies that'll take care of anything. You know, so they could go in and they could put some carbon matter down the drains and keep that system operational.
Another thing, you know, if we do go into that, we should have some funding, a revolving funding that low-income people or, you know, can take a loan, maybe 1% to interest, over a 20-year period,
Right.
that the town guaranteed. And also another thing I was thinking, we should maybe hire like 2 or 3 contractors that could do this thing, and we give them the contract for the whole town, and they give us a better rate, and the town can, make sure they're guaranteeing the loan, but I have to pay, I'll have to pay for it.
Sure.
Because there'll be a lot of people like me, I may be able to afford it without taking that loan, but there'll be a lot of people say, I can't afford this. How am I gonna
Right.
live here? I mean, before we go into we should have funding too. I mean, do you
Right.
look at that?
Well, you can't go in it without the funding, because you are going to have a fairly sizable percentage of people in town that just aren't going to be able to afford it.
Good, I'm glad, though.
And Glenn addressed that as well when he met with our commission. He went through various models of low-interest loans, no-interest loans, betterment charges on the tax rate, much like we had for the water system that was placed years ago. There's a lot of ways of coming at it, and there's going to be a lot of state money and federal money as well. And when I talked about this public hearing that's coming up on the 24th, I know I'm the president of our homeowners association, and I've talked to the board of directors, and they've allowed me to blanket email our association to hopefully get people to send a letter to the state before the 24th, urging them to look very carefully at the funding opportunities that would be available for us. I'd like to see us jockey ourselves into a position of priority with the state.
Because if we don't have the funding, it's not gonna get done.
No, you can't. It's a great dream, exactly.
Thank you.
Exactly. John can see this, I've got the big word funding right there on my notes, because I knew that question would come up.
Any other comments or questions to Paul?
Paul, under this letter from Department of Environmental Protection, the two changes, regulatory changes they're looking at,
Yes.
who's going to decide that? I mean, are they going to have public meetings? Are we going to vote at town meeting on this?
I would like to think that we are all going to decide that. When I say we, this is why I want the regulatory boards and commissions to be at the selectmen's meeting, at least a member of each one, to talk with the selectmen and have some transparency as to what are we going to pursue? Are we going to pursue a watershed permit type of scenario, which from what I read is a 20-year rollout?
It seems so onerous.
It's nothing I'm interested in, but I don't have all the facts and figures. I'd like to hear if people are interested in that, what it would entail. To me, and I'm still not as geographically good as those of you that have been here a lot longer than I have, our watersheds are shared with other communities. So it would be a fairly complicated permit because whether you're looking at the Falmouth side or the Cotuit side, you've got other communities that have to come into this. I believe there's only one Cape Cod watershed permit, and I think it's Orleans and Brewster and Harwich for Pleasant Bay. I think that's the only one right now on the Cape.
That was done recently, not too long ago, I mean, they were having problems with it.
I think it's been up and running now for 3 or 4 years maybe or so. And it looks from the fact sheet that the DEP issued, I read through it, it looks fairly complicated.
Extremely.
Yeah, and we've already started a plan. We've got a wastewater treatment facility that's been approved. We have phase 1 that's approved. I think these IA systems, as I said earlier, when you get outside phase 1 and whatever happens with phase 2, I really think that that's a solution that we should be pursuing, given the money.
Yeah.
So should we ask the select board to workshop with the regulatory boards on this matter?
That would be great.
Do you think that's appropriate?
Another thing that amazes me, how come we don't go with Sandwich, Falmouth, and Bond, and Mashpee, and do one sewer system? And because each town contributes to Mashpee. And it amazes me, after we build a sewer system, another problem is getting rid of the sludge. So you're gonna have 5 towns competing to, where am I gonna put this sludge?
Right.
You have all those towns combined 5 here, and then the Upper Cape and the Lower Cape. It'd be probably a lot cheaper, a lot easier to find out how we're gonna get rid of this sludge.
Well,
That's the
I was the
problem.
one that brought that up at our last meeting when we had all the boards together. I said, what about the sludge?
Oh,
And nobody seemed to be thinking about that.
I worked on Deer Island,
It's-
and that was
well-
a big problem,
Yeah.
you know.
That conversation's, other people said stuff too, so I think that's kind of on the,
Yeah.
thank goodness it was brought up.
Yeah.
So should we write a memo to the Board of Selectmen and ask them to workshop with regulatory boards on this? Or that we're willing to workshop with them, or encourage them to workshop?
Maybe encourage them to have a workshop.
Encourage them?
What
Get
do you think, John?
the band back together?
I don't know that it's not on their radar.
Right.
Oh,
I think it
all right,
is.
so why don't we wait?
Yeah.
I think it is on our radar. Or it should be.
Well, should we make it official and, you know, write
You
to
might
them
wanna
and
wait
say
till-
that we encourage them to workshop on it? Because I think
You
it,
might want to wait till after the meeting, because they might say it at the meeting, but otherwise, I'm not objecting to it.
Could. Why don't we just have the meeting? We could get all the boards together, the committees together, and then raise that issue.
Right.
Once we get the
right,
outline.
well, that's, right.
Like Mike said,
Should we write them, should we say to them, yes, we would like to have a convening of the regulatory boards to workshop on this matter? I think if we don't
Maybe I'm
do.
not understanding the word workshop. Are you talking about at a meeting, at a select board meeting?
So at a select board meeting, it's kind of like this, right? You can go and do public comment, but you can't really dialogue. So what they've done in the past is they've called together, they've convened more than one board at the same time to discuss a certain matter. And they call it, you know, convening the regulatory boards together. And they're the host.
well, let's see,
One topic.
On one topic, on nitrogen-sensitive area designation.
let's see what they do at the meeting, maybe they'll say, let's start having the planning board. and,
Okay.
You know, let's wait till that meeting.
Okay.
And then if not, we can send a letter, you know, if we decide then.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay.
I personally, you know, read this a couple of times, and I think the change number 2 is sort of written to scare the hell out of people and say, oh, no.
If you don't do anything,
I'll
you
do
have.
change number 1,
Yeah.
which nobody wants to do either.
Right.
But it seems a lot simpler than 2. I mean, who would run phase 2?
Well, either phase is painful. I mean, when you start thinking about entire neighborhoods being dug up to either enhance the Title V system they have or replace failed systems or take out cesspools, it's a tall order. I think of the area where I live, over in the Seabrook Meadows and Village and Shores Association, every one of those homes, every one of them are going to get dug up. But what's the alternative? I know it's painful, it's expensive, but look at the water. That's a little more painful. The situation that we're in right now is catastrophic.
They talk to you, you know, what's going to happen to our economy? The fishing decline, the shellfish tourism, and property values?
Well, property values is the number one
Yeah.
motivator, I would think, for
I would think
anyone
for
who's
people.
here.
Yeah.
Yep.
Not me, being able to swim.
My wife would agree with
Property
you.
goes down, but as long as you
Well, I
swim.
have one of the lowest assessed properties in town, so if it goes down by any percentage, it really doesn't hurt me too bad. But not being able to swim.
I wish mine was low, 'cause I'm living there, I don't want to pay the taxes, you know? My neighbor says, oh, the property went way up. I said, I wish mine went to $1, you know? I'm not gonna say.
Well, thank you, Paul.
Okay, thank you.
I'll be in attendance at that meeting.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay, good. I'll make sure you guys get I think you guys do get the agenda.
We got the,
Do you? You do. Do you guys get the Board of Selectmen agenda?
No.
Terry,
Okay.
Terry
I
said.
look it up, but
Right,
I don't get it.
I'll,
I get it.
You get it? Okay, I'll make sure you're on the list.
Okay,
Because
that'd be
I just, it was just like an unspoken favor.
You can
sheet.
sign up for it. You just go in and, you can register for it, and they send it, they email
Register,
it to
how do
you.
you register?
I did it on there, I think it's either on the select board page or,
Okay.
Yeah.
Terry in the past has emailed the entirety of the board. I'll let her know in the morning that we need to make sure your email is added to the planning board's list so that you get it in circulation. I can do that.
Okay, do you have it too, already?
Yeah, I would probably, I should get it through the planning board now. I was getting it as finance committee, so.
Okay.
All right, great. So Affordable Workforce Housing Initiative, Evan obviously is working on a short list of redevelopment properties and other target areas. Any other ideas under all that? Would you just let the Housing Committee know that we're doing that? I want to make sure that we meet with them when appropriate.
Sure.
And if they want to meet about the housing chapter, we should carve out some time on that, whenever you feel it's ready for us to meet with them.
Great.
Yeah. Under new business, review draft of,
Floodplain.
yeah, was there any public comment about the Clean Water Initiative or the Affordable Housing Workforce Initiative I have on the agenda? Okay, sorry. So anyways, new business, review draft floodplain provision bylaw amendment article.
All right. I left a finalized draft on your tables today.
Final.
That one is game ready.
so this is different than the one you emailed?
I sent you, in your packet, you got an email from me. I met with the county floodplain coordinator after my first stab, and it required
okay.
some modifications.
Okay.
Not major modifications, but I made the requisite edits and printed a copy and left it for you here.
Is this it
Let me just
The
take a
thin
look. I
one
can tell you very
versus
quickly.
the thick one?
This is, yes,
Thin is good.
this is the one you need, right there. These warrant articles are a FEMA requirement. If we do not pass this repeal and replace, any property in the floodplain who requires flood insurance will lose their flood insurance.
What did you say? Oh.
If this article.
You mean repeal and replace the existing and replace it with this, all right,
yes.
not a building,
Um,
okay?
I did go through, because what this seeks to do is remove potential conflicts with the state building code out of the zoning bylaw where it implies the zoning board of appeals can issue variances from the state building code, which they cannot.
Okay,
And it mostly addresses administrative requirements for the Concom and building commissioner for using data, reporting data, and enforcement actions for properties in the floodplain. But these are the minimum requirements that are absolutely mandated by FEMA to maintain our status in the National Flood Insurance Program, which the town has been in since the late 70s. So again, not passing these as presented would jeopardize anyone with flood insurance's actual insurance, and if their mortgage is connected to the necessity for flood insurance,
Right.
it can compromise their mortgage. I did meet with the Barnstable County Floodplain Coordinator, went through the proposal with the building commissioner and with the conservation agent, rectified any potential conflicts with our current zoning. There are a few provisions that exist in our current floodplain provisions that are captured in these, such as manufactured homes. There are no manufactured home parks in the floodplain in Mashpee, but the building code definition for modular housing and prefab housing actually implies a manufactured home, so we didn't want to remove them, and there's like a gray area there. So I kept them in there, with the exception of removing language with regard to compacted fill. We don't want to encourage compacted fill when a solid wall foundation with flood openings is more aesthetically pleasing and much more, it's much more well-equipped at handling floodwaters. So that was one noted change. Everything else is consistent with the state model. And we deleted provisions that were kind of relics of former requirements and didn't make sense. So this is what I presented, and again, if there have been situations where towns have not adopted these at town meeting and it causes a mess. You have to keep bringing this to town meeting and really get it approved because it's a requirement of the voluntary program we've participated in since the late 70s. We can go above and beyond the minimum requirements that FEMA has established. So I do think we have an opportunity to work with the Barnstable County Flood Coordinator to consider opportunities for enhancing these regulations and making them more robust. But for the purposes of getting to October town meeting and maintaining compliance with our floodplain obligations, I think we should submit these for October with the thought that we might have an opportunity to make these provisions more robust in consideration of existing needs, development challenges in floodplain, et cetera.
So that has to be submitted by July 14th?
July 11th. I
Oh,
believe.
July 11th.
That sounds right. Maybe the 14th, but
May I have a
yes, sure.
Yes, I looked at the Massachusetts 2020 model floodplain bylaws.
Yeah.
And on page 19, our procedures for the granting of variances by a community are as follows. Would a community be a zoning board?
It would.
Okay, so why not put all these great definitions and rules under variances as opposed to just 1, 2, and 3, good, you know, the reason that it may be granted? I mean, some of these are great answers here. Variance shall not be issued by a community within a designated regulatory floodway if an increase in flood levels during the base flood discharge would result. There are 7 of them. They look, it's on page 19.
Was that in our packet?
It's
Yeah,
in
it's right
the model floodplain, yeah. I mean, these are good rules, and maybe that would help somewhat, you know, the problem we have right now with the easy granting of variances.
So, I'm sorry, just say what section it is?
It's, you see the blue ink?
Yep.
Okay, go to the blue ink, and it starts paginating at Massachusetts 2020 Model Floodplain Bylaws. That's not blue ink, that's black, but there's some blue headers.
So, okay, so are you page 17?
Page 19,
19, thank you.
written in italics, or not italics, but yeah.
Okay, so, and there's 7, okay, so variance is 7.
Can I just?
Yeah, sure, got it.
I mean, that really spells it out.
I'm going to read it right now.
Go ahead.
Okay, sorry.
I,
And there's a-
I'll wait.
if any-
And that gives some real teeth to the bylaw.
Okay, so I'm just seeing this provision here.
This one here?
Yes. That's covered in the 174-61.2 variances to building code floodplain standards.
Okay, so that you wouldn't need.
Yeah, so this is,
Wait, I'm not done. Just give me 2 seconds, I'm on number 7.
You say it's covered where?
the proposed 174-61.2. Because again, a large intent of this is to make sure that any provision that's a mandate of the building code is not contemplated in the zoning at all. So variances in this case are granted by a state commission. So
I understand that. And you're saying there'd be a problem if you put that because the building code is, that rules.
that
So,
rules when it comes to the floodplain. And our current bylaw contemplates a lot of building code standards.
Okay, so tell me again why we wouldn't want to put any of these.
so number
paragraphs.
1, right, is there a problem with putting number 1 in? Or Evan, do you want to ask the
Well, what I'm saying is I thoroughly went through the model with the floodplain coordinator, and what is proposed is exactly what she has approved, to be compliant with our FEMA requirements. So.
Right, but we can go above them. We can go above them.
Provided we
So
don't
Karen
conflict
is
with the building
suggesting
code.
that we include 1 through 7.
Karen, can I just see your notes, do you mind? Just so because,
This?
yes, if you don't
Yeah,
mind.
sure. I mean,
Because, I mean, number 1, variances shall not be issued by a community within any designated regulatory floodway if any increase in flood levels during the base flood discharge would result.
This section addresses local zoning board variances only and applies only when other variance procedures, such as those under the state building code, do not cover the variance request. The whole purpose of this bylaw is to imply that there is no variance that could be issued by the zoning board of appeals, and it's going to be a requirement to go to the state building commission, whomever is the regulatory authority in that regard, to issue the variance.
I know, wait a minute. Repeat that again and go slower.
The whole purpose of this bylaw is to remove any building code related provision from the zoning bylaw where it implies the zoning board of appeals has the authority to grant a variance, which they do not. This contemplates situations where it says right here in the front section, this section addresses local zoning board variances only and applies only when other variance procedures, such as those under the state building code, do not cover the variance request. So under the variances to building code floodplain standards, it specifically addresses issuing a letter to the property owner regarding potential impacts.
Where are you?
The
What
issuance of
section?
variance to construct a structure below the base flood level will result in an increased premium rates for flood insurance. Because the one thing the building code covers is the local authorities have no ability or authority to allow a structure to be built below the base flood level.
All right,
Building
so
code is
you're
done
on
with the dominion.
61.2?
Yes.
Okay. So the variance has
So
to
a
be by the
variance-
state.
Yes,
Not-
and so a variance from these floodplain bylaws by the ZBA must meet the requirements set out by state law. So you have to comply with the building code.
Okay. And the ZBA can no longer issue variances in those
Yep.
cases.
That's what it says, right?
I mean, if that's the intent, we should put it in there.
You know,
No, if that's real, if you're saying the intent is to remove the authority of the building commissioner and the zoning board from issuing variances, we should put that in there. The purpose is,
Is that the purpose?
oh, no, I don't think that's
you're
the
asking me
purpose.
questions I don't necessarily have the answer to. I only know that this bylaw has been thoroughly vetted by myself and the floodplain coordinator, and it's been approved for compliance and
Okay.
consistency with.
Could
FEMA
I just say-
requirements.
but wait, what were you saying? We need to take out,
What this does is it has removed in our current, can I pass this around? This is our current bylaw with the comments that we've gone through relative to the conflicts with the state building code that might add some value to this discussion.
why don't you Xerox it for us?
I have it right here.
Oh.
We got oh, is it
Yeah.
one page?
Yeah.
Oh.
Thank you. Oh, okay. Those are the comments that I couldn't read.
How you holding up, Chrissy?
So you can, our current floodplain standards, our floodplain provisions, contemplate numerous building code provisions, which implies that the zoning board of appeals has the ability to vary those requirements. Most of these sections we've removed because we do not want to imply that the zoning board of appeals has the authority to vary building code requirements.
Okay.
The proposed bylaw removes all of the building code related provisions and deals with only those zoning related matters that the zoning board of appeals does govern, things like, where's my cheat sheet? The bylaw includes only those regulations that are not enforced through state requirements such as the statewide Building Code and Wetlands Protection Act. The most significant new regulations pertain to administrative management of permits in the floodplain for the building and conservation departments. The only items that are not related to the administrative floodplain developments are ensuring adequate drainage is provided in subdivisions in the floodplain in certain rare flood zones, minimizing flood damage in subdivisions, and requiring that RVs in the floodplain are either elevated and anchored in accordance with the zone's regulations for foundation and elevation requirements. be on the site for less than 180 consecutive days. So we can go above and beyond the provisions required of the state. I think we just need to have a more substantive dialogue on what those provisions are, because with the language proposed with regard to variances, there's no concern from staff or the Barnstable County Floodplain Coordinator that there's going to be an issue with regard to zoning board of appeals issuing variances that they don't have the authority to issue.
But this is the language, isn't this the language they had in the original one? What's here, just this 3 points? I mean,
That
they
is-
know what the definition of variance is, but they give it, even though they don't meet this test.
I don't understand your question.
This is the only thing that's listed on this new one, the proposed one here. What are grounds for granting a variance by the zoning board? 1, 2, 3. That's all. Well, that's what they've been dealing with, right?
But they can't vary building code requirements. This is saying you
Right.
have to meet the state requirements. And then if there's anything else that
Okay, they have to meet the state requirements first and then look at this?
so yes.
Okay, Mary,
All right, say it to me.
they have to meet the state building code requirements first. What's in there, in the blue? And then the zoning board looks at these 3 criteria.
Again, the building code is the dominion here with when it comes to the floodplain.
So where's the 3 criteria?
170, on the draft that he did on 174.61.3.
61.3.
It sounds like those in the blue are, they have to do that anyways, they don't have anything to say. That's just the state requirements. So the zoning board.
Yeah,
wouldn't
but, you know,
take any
it's
action
not
on it
saying what's set out by state law.
Because
and if-
that's the law.
I know, but see if they know what the state law is, they might be less inclined to grant a variance.
I think that would be the zoning board responsibility, wouldn't it, really?
Yeah.
These, 61.3, there you go.
I mean, I'm just saying, if they
Let's
can't
insinuate
take any
something
action
that's
on it,
not
all
there.
those other ones, then why put them in there?
Right.
It's already, there's something they have to
Because they
do.
don't know, they may not know.
What do you
state
mean?
law.
No,
Isn't that the,
I guess
that's
I'm not here to say
insinuating something, though.
our zoning people wouldn't know that.
What do you say, Dennis?
I mean, what makes you think they don't know?
I,
But we don't want to be ambiguous, that's, I think
Yeah.
what Karen is saying.
yeah,
Variance from this floodplain.
What I'll do, Karen, if it's okay with the board, is I'll pose the question to the floodplain coordinator
Yeah.
okay.
and make sure that we got it right. I'm confident we do.
Okay.
And if there's an opportunity for enhancing that section, I'll bring it back to you at our next meeting, prior
Okay.
to submission, if that
Thank
works for
you.
the board.
fine.
All right, so some of her comments got cut off on the back page.
I'm assuming the floodplain coordinator is the authority on this.
She got a national award from
Yeah.
FEMA
Thank you.
a couple
Isn't
years
that
ago.
great? Glad she's here to answer these questions. All right.
Well, she's the
so-
one that drafted didn't she
this-
help draft the warrant?
I drafted it, she scrutinized it,
Right.
and then we finalized it.
So
Right.
what's her comments on the backside? This phrasing makes me very uncomfortable with so many building code provisions in
This
this
by-
bylaw. This suggests that the ZBA,
Can grant a variance to the building code
Wait.
provisions in this bylaw. I'd remove those,
okay, provisions. What comes after provisions?
I think noted above, or take out the detail regarding substantial improvements in half-acre developments. Town does not have the authority to allow any structure to be built below base flood level, is what I meant to finish there.
I removed these provisions.
Those are your notes?
noted above.
I couldn't print it out with the comment boxes showing, so I wrote them.
I got it.
To take out the detail, substantial improvements, and half-acre developments. Town does not have authority to allow by statute?
Drop.
Built below, and it's supposed to finish with base flood
Allow-
level.
Structure to be
Built.
built below what?
Base flood level.
So you're dealing with an expert, and we shouldn't be second guessing that expert's quality.
She knows a lot more than I do.
I-
And-
Right,
and
but
so
we're,
you're
but
asking
we're the
questions-
planning board, so we're responsible. She's not. We are. So we are gonna go spend the time on this. I'm
Well, yeah,
sorry.
but
I know, it's
we are,
9:45.
we're responsible for it. We've gone to the expert who's gotten a national award and had her scrutinize and help author the warrant. She's the expert. I'm okay with that.
I'm going to understand this before I vote on it, that's for sure. Thank
Well, you take as much time as you need.
Thank you. And then the next block, I can't read what she said. I'm not sure.
I'm not sure why fill or pilings are the only options. A solid wall foundation with flood openings should be allowed as well, and is more flood-friendly than fill, and often more aesthetically desirable than pilings.
Which is what you referenced 30 minutes ago.
John's right, she's the expert. I mean, we should just,
You know what? Guys, I've been handed this, and I can't read the edge. I think that's unbelievable. I need to know what that says. I'm sorry.
Whose notes are they?
They're hers that
They're hers.
I've transcribed, so you can read them.
So they're her notes.
John, it's off the page. I'm trying to read them too. Maybe we just had the.
It seems like you're getting annoyed because we're having a conversation about
Well,
this.
no, I'm assuming that her notes informed her opinion of the warrant, right?
So anyway, I'm going to call order. Okay. Obviously, we're not able to have a roundtable discussion on this, sorry. All right. So, so I have this. Karen brought up something with the 7. Did you get that answered satisfactorily? Okay. Do you have any other questions about this?
No. This, I'd like to be able to know exactly what this says and read this at my leisure, this whole thing.
Yeah. All right, so there's that. Michael, do you have any questions?
No, I feel after listening to what the question was, and the response was that the 7 points, which are interesting points, don't have to be included because that's mandated by the state, and the zoning board can't take action on those 7 points anyways. So, and then Evan verified that with the expert, and therefore put together a draft article that seems to make sense. So, no, I have no more questions. I'm pretty comfortable.
Any other part of the bylaw you have any questions on?
I don't have any, no. Thanks, but thanks.
Oh, sorry.
Dennis?
no, I mean,
John?
No, I trust the expert.
we hire experts to give us their opinion. I mean, and this one was free, I hope. And, she's a pretty smart person.
I do have a question about the existing 17462 development within a velocity zone. This is written to not conflict with the building code, but it is not necessary. Why does she think it's not necessary? Because it goes to the Concom?
Because it's, yeah.
Yeah.
And how does it go to the Concom? So I'm wondering if we can leave this in. If we can leave development within a V zone and not conflict. Can you ask her that? I mean, she said it's not necessary, but we can go above and beyond.
It's just a utility question. The Conservation Commission doesn't have the authority to do anything with the zoning bylaw. The Board of Appeals does. I'll bring her the question and report back.
Yeah, because I'd like to keep that, I'd like to be clear that the development in the velocity zone is not allowed.
What are velocity zones?
I don't think we have a flood map up, but they map out, and I think it's based on elevation, where
I
a high
live in
risk.
one of them zones.
High risk?
High risk and low risk of flood, so this special flood zones. Then there's also areas that that FEMA has determined if there was a storm event and a surge, they would be velocity zones, and they calculated out, it's gonna get.
So translate that, a very fast-moving.
Right, and you wanna be careful in those areas, because if you're there in your house, you think you're safe, but it's a velocity zone, and your house is more likely to get swept away and loss of life.
Sorry.
But FEMA has a really good website.
I would look at
Yeah.
it.
This is just another one of those provisions, though, too, where the building code reigns supreme. So the development within a velocity zone is completely covered by the Massachusetts Building Code. And as it pertains to the dune components, it's not a zoning related matter, it's a land that's subject to coastal storm flooding, which is governed by Concom. Which is why we propose to remove it.
Dune, okay, this is written, not. So you're saying that the state building code doesn't allow building in the velocity zone?
It governs building in the velocity zone. So this is saying you can develop in the floodplain, but you have to meet the standards of the Massachusetts Building Code.
You gotta put the house up 14 feet.
So notwithstanding the applicable provisions of the
Right.
building code, all new construction and substantial improvement within the V-zone shall be elevated on adequately anchored pilings or columns. That's building code. So that was wordsmithed to not conflict with the building code, but the whole purpose of doing this is to remove building code provisions completely from the zoning bylaw.
Which makes sense.
All right, so I'm gonna table this matter to our next meeting. Do you have any questions as you're reading this stuff through? When is that lady going on vacation?
She's not available for either of our meetings. This one.
No,
or-
but I mean, if we got you questions, is she working next week?
I think so, yeah.
So,
I think July 1st she's gone to past the 4th, but, yeah.
so when should we get our
If you could get to me by the weekend, that'd be great, and I'll forward them to her prior
Okay.
to the weekend.
Sound good, Karen? So by Friday. All right.
And she won a national award.
Yes.
What did you say?
I asked if she won a national.
Oh, I
award.
think that's the second time you said that.
Yeah,
Would you like to
third,
say
I
that
thought it
third,
was the
fourth,
third
fifth? I think I'm gonna go visit her and look at her award on the wall.
You should.
Thank you. All right. I think we're done with chairman's report, town planner's report. We have some, is there any public comment? Nobody signed up?
I got something of the new business.
Yes, sir.
Okay, a Great Oak Road where the cottages come out to it. They gotta put a stop sign or something written down there, because the last 3 times, last night, about 9 o'clock, I was going up to the gas station. 2 cars, I was right there, 2 cars just pulled right out. They didn't stop, it was dark, and luckily, wasn't going that fast. 2 weeks ago, where I was 2 cars behind. Cars come down, one went up towards the common, and one went out to the beach. The poor guy had to go into the embankment without eating, because they can't see till they get down to the end, and they drive out. I'd like to see a stop sign there so they stop. And then another one is Kenny Masters' property.
Oh, well, that's dangerous.
Yeah, but when you come out, you come out to go up to the school. Or if you're going towards, Old Boswell Road, you go that way, and there's only one way coming in, and that's on like if you're coming out, that's on the far left-hand side. I seen a person come down and went right in on the path that they're supposed to go out, because there's no signage or lines telling you. And I'm thinking when it's dark, that could be an accident right there. There's probably 8, 9 houses that people live in already.
Yeah.
But, we should do something about that.
Yeah, I think there's things that we need to do within the road layout itself that would be under the jurisdiction of the DPW. And then remember that for that intersection in particular, most of those lots are still subject to the covenant. And lot releases at the end are conditional upon reconfiguring that intersection that Charlie redesigned with their engineer.
I mean, it looks good and it'll work, but I think there should be the line saying,
Yeah.
don't go this way, or just the arrow going this way, and the arrow going that way in one
Yeah.
entrance.
You want to let Kenny know?
It's a tough, that's a
Up
tough,
for-
that's a tough call.
Oh, yeah,
Dennis's
especially-
field observations, I'm sure he would love to hear them.
Sure.
And how do we get a stop sign put up?
That's a tough corner.
It depends where it goes. If it's in the private road layout of New Seabury, it would be on the.
There's no stop sign, I'll
developer.
put one in next week.
Yeah, but you'll say,
Oh, I thought there was one there.
yeah, because it's dangerous.
If it's not a town road layout, then they can
No, it's
plop one in.
a private road, it's our road, but I thought there was a stop sign there.
They should have one, it just
get you.
makes sense.
I'll take care of it,
Okay, thanks, Mike.
because I was sure there was one there, but I,
There probably is, and they're blowing through it.
No, I didn't see one. I
Might
mean,
be
I'm
with
shocked,
those
I'm
little
surprised.
LED blinking things on it. It
And I'm
might be
thinking,
too dark.
especially now in the summertime,
Yeah.
your kids are gonna be, oh, this is an easy way to get out, and people coming from the beach, we're gonna have an accident.
no, I am surprised you said that, because I thought there was one there.
So,
I
didn't
don't
see
go out
one.
that way, but I told the Seabrave they should put one in, a long time ago. They don't listen to me. But I'll take care of it.
Okay.
Thank you, Mike.
And you'll let Kenny know. Anything else, sir?
Oh,
One
I'll
more
make a
thing. Is
motion to adjourn.
there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you.